Chapter 1. In a house in a civilian area of Queens, New York, or a slum area. Xiao was in the small bathroom, with his upper body bare, and his thin figure could be seen clearly in the reflection of the somewhat worn mirror. To put it bluntly, he was just a thin dog. His advantage was that he looked handsome, with delicate facial features and bright black eyes. But the skin looks very pale. The latter is not because the skin appears white, but because it lacks enough nutrients, so that the skin appears unhealthy pale. Xiao still remembers that after get off work, he went through the normal process of eating, taking a shower, and checking his mobile phone, and then he fell into sleep when he was tired and sleepy. As a result, when he awakened, he found that he had changed his identity. The same name, but a different life. The ordinary and uneventful life in the previous life is different from the current life in New York, USA. An Asian who is less than 18 years old can live in New York. The reason is very simple. His parents are runners. Two idiots who came to the United States from the East because of their desire for so-called freedom and democracy. When he was 10 years old, they brought him to this place together. After several years of hard work, his mother was accidentally involved in a shootout between street gangsters and was unfortunately shot dead. A year later, while working hard, his father he died of myocardial infarction due to overexertion. He was left with a teenage child, an old house of less than 70 square meters and some savings. The inheritance left behind was not much, only about $5,000 in savings. Needless to say, the mother was involved in an accidental shooting. She did not buy insurance and the gunman was not caught, so she did not receive compensation at all. And his father died suddenly while at work. Without signing a labor contract, his boss still had to compensate him for the thousands of dollars. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't even get thousands of dollars in inheritance. After all, I had worked hard for several years to buy this house, so I naturally didn't have much savings. After reading the memory of this body, Xiao felt somewhat numb. What was even more embarrassing was that he read some information from his memory that frightened him. Tony Stark. A billionaire whose popularity has exploded in New York and even the United States, Tony Stark, and a group that is extremely disgusted and despised by mainstream public opinion in the world, Mutants. The well-known and deadly universe is stoned here. The moment he read these memories, Xiao was already thinking about how to return to his hometown, the United States, New York, and the Marvel Universe. The sum of these words equals one result: coolness. It's so dangerous. He's still a kid under 18 years old. He wants to go home. What's more, even if there is no Marvel Universe buff overlay, what is the concept of an Asian with no identity background and money blessing living in the city of New York, USA? From his memory alone, he had seen being bullied no less than dozens of times. What else could he say but despair? Xiao sighed, life is not easy. At the moment, he saw a small black figure crawling leisurely on the old and not very clean sink in front of him. After seeing it, Xiao picked up the shampoo that was almost used up on the sink. The bottle was smashed. With a bang and precise guidance, the old friend comrade Xiao couldn't even scream and was reduced to pulp in an instant. Before Xiao could lift the shampoo bottle, he was suddenly stunned, because a ball of light that was only a few centimeters in file size suddenly appeared in front of him, exuding a suspicious blood-colored light. The next moment, this blood-colored light group suddenly appeared. It rushed over, hit his heart, and blended into it. Xiao was so frightened that he hurriedly touched his body, fearing that something dirty would turn into an alien-like monster, and he would go through the incubation process and be finished. Fortunately, when Xiao was still in shock, he suddenly felt a warm current emerging from his heart, which spread throughout his body. It's like soaking in a hot spring, very warm and the feeling is very clear. However, the whole process did not last long, probably less than a second. If Xiao was not sure that this feeling was very real, he would even think that the previous experience was an illusion. Xiao frowned and gradually calmed down. He raised his hands and looked at the palms of his hands. Then he raised his head and looked at the mirror. From the reflection, he could see that his unhealthy paleness had become rosy. What is this? He thought for a moment, then looked at the shampoo bottle with comrade Xiaoqiang's body on the sink, and stretched out his hand to pick it up. Suddenly his eyes lit up. It's become lighter. Xiao was very sure that although the weight of the shampoo bottle he picked up before was very light because of similar use, the weight he picked up before felt completely different from the weight he was carrying now. He was sure that the weight he was picking up was lighter than before, as light as cotton. What does that mean? reminiscent of the blood-colored light group that suddenly appeared after killing comrade Xiao. After the light group crashed into his body, the shampoo bottle he picked up became lighter, and a guess instantly emerged in Bai Xiao's mind. To test his idea, he immediately took action. As one of the most well-known slums in New York, the roads here are dilapidated, the houses are in disrepair, and there are piles of garbage everywhere. There are a large number of homeless people on the streets. An intersection in the area can have a disaster every year. There are dozens of major cases where low-income families are queuing up every week to receive government subsidies. One can imagine the poverty, squalor, and chaos here, but the irony is that in such a slum, just a few subway stops away, and a street 3 or 4 kilometers away, is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in New York. Park Avenue. Here is the tallest residential building in the world, with a dozen or even dozens of billionaires in one building. There is opulence and grandeur everywhere. In contrast, in the area where Bai Xiao lives, all that can be seen is garbage, rats, cockroaches, etc. Therefore, the house where Bai Xiao lives has never lacked comrades. With Bai Xiao's careful attention, he saw many comrades Xiao in the dark corners of the house. In the past, these were the little guys who gave Bai Xiao the biggest headache. Now he sees it like a poor man sees money. Without any hesitation, he immediately stepped forward and stepped on them one by one with his feet. The guys crawling on the wall picked up his slippers and beat them to death one by one. Sure enough, just to verify Bai Xiao's idea, when he brutally killed these cockroaches, blood-colored light clusters a few centimeters from what he had seen before appeared in front of him one by one, and they aimed at Bai Xiao like meteors. It came over and penetrated into his heart. The moment the blood-red light group submerged, the previous comfortable feeling like soaking in a hot spring reappeared. Under Bai Xiao's special attention, he clearly perceived that his body was undergoing earth-shaking changes. The bones, muscles, internal organs and even cells are changing. This feeling is clear and wonderful. But it also didn't last long, probably only a second. Bai Xiao suppressed his ecstasy. He ignored the cockroaches that had turned into flesh and returned to the bathroom with his slippers. He threw the slippers aside, looked at the reflection in the mirror, carefully looked at himself in the mirror, and felt that he was physical changes. The first is vision, hearing, and smell. His vision was already pretty good, but he found that the world in front of him became clearer and the things he saw were more subtle. He could even see clearly some broken lines in the cracks in the mirror, which he had never been able to do before. The second is hearing. His hearing is also farther than before. Under the sound of some vehicles passing by outside the window, he can hear the footsteps and conversations of passers-by or homeless people on the street, and even the noise of neighbors in the surrounding buildings and apartments. The same goes for his sense of smell. He could already smell all kinds of smells in the house. Mold and stench caused by moisture. However, when he specifically controls it, these extended senses will be blocked. In addition, his thinking will also be clearer and faster than before. This makes Bai Xiao know that this means that his brain nerves have also been damaged. There is a certain strength, after all, the facial features are directly connected to the brain nerves. Without strengthening his brain nerves, he would not be able to control his suddenly strengthened senses. Secondly, he looked at his naked upper body in the reflection in the mirror. His originally ordinary body already had the outline of muscles. He returned to the living room and tried lifting heavy objects one by one, jumping on the spot, and making a circle around the living room. Shape running and so on. Finally, it was concluded that his strength was enough for him to lift the heaviest object known to him at home, a double bed, which weighed about 100 kilograms. And it was very easy to lift it up. After lifting it, he did the regular exercise of squatting. After more than 10 minutes, he felt slightly out of breath. This means that his strength and endurance have made him a monster among ordinary people. You must know that the world weightlifting champion's limit is only about 500 kilograms, and the time he can hold on is only a mere 1 or 2 seconds. Each of these weightlifting champions weighs more than 100 kilograms and has undergone scientific training all year round. Bai Xiao himself originally lifted a weight of about 100 kilograms and felt very relaxed. The up and down squat exercise lasted for more than 10 minutes, and he did not feel any pain in his muscles or bones. This means that his own limits are yet to be determined. As for speed, he ran around the small living room. Due to terrain restrictions, the speed could not be measured for the time being. However, according to Bai Xiao's own visual inspection, he should have gained a lot of strength. After all, strength and endurance are actually enough after strength. proving the associated speed, explosiveness will also be strengthened. The body is a complete component, and every muscle and bone is a precise instrument. After the strength and endurance are obviously strengthened, it is impossible for the speed and explosive power to be strengthened, otherwise it would be too contradictory, unless the body fission and become some kind of Kesu-Lu. After completing these tests, Bai Xiao already felt extremely hungry. The reason is very simple. The stronger your physical fitness, the more energy you need to take in. Otherwise, you will not be able to maintain the nutritional energy you need. What's more, originally his physical fitness was not good enough before, and his nutrition was also insufficient. After suddenly strengthening his body and doing these test exercises, it was strange that he was not hungry. Bai Xiao came to the living room and rummaged through the old second-hand refrigerator. There were not many ingredients. He had no choice but to take out the ingredients he had planned for tomorrow. After making a simple meal, he started to cook. Eat it up. The food was simple, a big pot of rice, some frozen chicken legs, wings, beef and potatoes. Meat in the United States is actually much cheaper than vegetables, and vegetables are also cheaper, namely potatoes. Due to her family environment and personality, Bai Xiao previously planned to focus on potatoes as the main meal for 3 meals a day, supplemented by some cheap meat. Definitely it is also limited to quick frozen chicken legs, wings and beef. After all, meat is cheaper, but in fact Bai Xiao still can't sustain eating every meal. The biggest shortcoming of low-income people in the United States is insufficient vitamin intake. An imbalance of yin and yang will cause many diseases, and Bai Xiao is even more deficient than low-income people. It is too difficult for an Asian boy like him to find a job. If he doesn't set low standards for himself, he will soon make himself poor. So this is why malnutrition occurs. Fortunately, His Majesty doesn't care so much now. After preparing today's meal, he ate a large pot of rice, chicken legs, chicken wings, stewed potatoes and beef, and then felt full. After eating and drinking, I washed the dishes and thought at the same time. The previous changes led to the conclusion that after killing the life essence of the killed life will be extracted for some reason and strengthen itself, and the strengthening should be all round. A small life form can strengthen so much, maybe it's because my body was originally bad enough that I experienced such a big change. The subsequent strengthening effect of cockroach's life superposition may gradually decrease due to the strengthening of its own body. What is this? Abortion? Gluttony? And the life essence file size is the file size of the individual life or the strength of the life force. Or a combination of the two. There is no shortage of races with strong vitality in this world. At least the known creatures with strong vitality are originally humans themselves, not to mention creatures such as mutants, blood clan, werewolves, and demons that are also emerging endlessly on the earth. It seems that they will develop in the future. Is the road heading towards the hunter? Coming to this extremely exciting and chaotic universe, without the sudden gold finger, he might have just found a way to return to his hometown in the east. But now that he has the gold finger, Bai Xiao will not forgive himself if it is a waste. After all, doesn't that man want to become stronger and live a wonderful life? Bai Xiao has already been mentally prepared to kill people. In his previous life, he was an honest man. That was because of the constraints of the law. In this chaotic universe or in a place like New York, he would not kill a white-skinned black man. Any moral constraints? Bai Xiao, who is definitely an innocent and kind-hearted person, will not touch him. He will kill him, and he will kill some damn garbage. It's not just indiscriminate killing, he still has a basic moral bottom line, although it is more flexible. Anyway, this world is heaven and hell, and there are Olympians, giants of Jotunheim, dark elves, multi-universe and so on. There are a lot of powerful life races. He doesn't need to turn himself into someone who pursues power. Bad people. It's just a joke to say it's cannibalism, it's really not as vegetarian as a monster. Nowadays, Bai Xiao must first improve his life and find ways to make himself stronger, so that he can have the ability to hunt more powerful people or monsters. Perhaps, I have to find a few trash to kill first and try out the ability to absorb life essence. Squeak, turning off the faucet, putting the tableware in place, picking up a dry towel and wiping his hands. Bai Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly, a cold light flickered, and the figures who had bullied him in the past emerged in his memory. For some remnants, being killed in a place like this won't attract much attention, and he can also practice his original killing skills and avenge his original body's owner. Plus get some money from that garbage to improve your life. Chapter 2. The nights in the slums of Queens, New York, are not very lively. It can even be said to be quiet. As time goes by, the quieter it becomes. In addition to wanting to sleep, the bigger reason is fear. Those ordinary families know very well what will happen if they go out in the middle of the night. There is a high probability that they will be attacked. After all, there are too many homeless people, hooligans, and gangs here. Ordinary people are just prey one after another in front of these people. In a place like this, it is entirely possible to be physically disappeared. There is definitely nightlife here, and there are all kinds of bars and the like, but they are in a specific location. There are dedicated gangs behind each site to protect them, and ordinary gangsters will not cause trouble in such places. In the dark and chaotic streets, the street lights on both sides emitted a dim light, the parked vehicles were quiet, and the houses on both ends of the street were dark with little light. In some places on both sides of the street, you can see some figures sleeping. Those are homeless people. Definitely in some dark alley corners, a few figures gathered together smoking greedily, waiting for their prey to come. Fake, the weight of this thing is getting less and less, and Sonny's greedy vampire is pricing it higher and higher. A black man wearing a t-shirt and tattoos smoked a cigarette greedily while complaining that there was too little of a certain ingredient in the cigarette. Next to him, another black man wearing a peaked cap was smoking a cigarette and said nothing at all. Two of the dark-skinned companions nodded in agreement. If that guy wasn't just a glove, he would have been killed by such an increase in price. We don't know who the person behind him is, but we can't afford to offend him. There was a small gang who wanted to take advantage of others, but they were killed inexplicably the next night. Let's do our job well and grab more money, otherwise we won't even be able to afford cigarettes. Several people were smoking and muttering, and their eyes were constantly scanning. However, while they were patiently waiting for their prey to come to their door, they didn't know that the death god had quietly approached. They didn't realize it at all. There was a figure standing in the darkness deep in the alley. Walking in slowly with light steps, as light as a tiger hunting its prey. In the far distance, a car was driving, its headlights falling on the street and slightly illuminating the alley. Just as the attention of several gangsters was attracted, a hand quietly reached behind the last black man. It went up to his neck, and the other hand covered his mouth and nose like lightning. The black man instinctively wanted to struggle, but the other hand suddenly used force to crush his neck. The laryngeal cartilage was crushed, the trachea collapsed, and he soon lost consciousness. The body was limp. The person who came gently placed the body on the ground. For a moment, he immediately moved forward, grabbed the other black man's neck with both hands and twisted it hard. The black man also died without any reaction. There was some movement, and he immediately got the attention of the remaining three people. When he subconsciously turned around, his pupils shrank suddenly and his expression became extremely frightened. Then a strong wind hit, and the black figure rushed towards them fiercely like a tiger. Before the three of them could react, the man punched two fiercely in succession, hitting the necks of the two gangsters on the left and right accurately. On the ground, after two muffled sounds, the two gangsters died instantly. They stared wide-eyed and covered their necks, suffocating, and fell to the ground. Their bodies were still twitching instinctively. The remaining one had a frightened face, opened his mouth and turned around, instinctively wanting to escape. However, the man's speed was explosive and his reactions were so fast that he didn't look like a human being. After killing two people in a row, he faced the last gangster who wanted to escape. Without stopping, he stepped in front of the man in 2 steps. The other man's turning movement was just he raised his voice even slightly, and without even shouting out the roar, he was punched in the throat again. There is no doubt about the result. His throat was collapsed by a punch, his body staggered back 2 steps, and finally fell to the ground with despair, confusion, and fear. From killing the first one to the 5th one, the whole process took no more than 10 seconds. It was smooth, just like a professional killer, cold and ruthless. At this time, a car drove past on the street outside the alley. The driver did not even notice that 5 lives had died in that seemingly inconspicuous alley at this moment. The murderer stood among the 5 corpses, watching the car disappear. The residual light from the street lamp in the distance fell on him. He was wearing ordinary and simple sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and 2 plastic shoes on his white shoes. Shoe covers, white gloves on his hands, a cap and hood on his head, and a mask on his face. In the dim light, only a pair of somewhat cold eyes could be seen from under the hood and brim. He stood there, seeming to feel something. After remaining silent for 2 seconds, he squatted down and rummaged through the gangster one by one. He found wallets from these people and took the money from them. All the cash was taken out. As for the gold chain watches and the like, nothing was touched. In addition, these people also had pistols with them and had no intention of taking them away. After collecting the cash, he kicked it casually in his pocket, then turned around and slowly walked into the deepest part of the alley step by step. His back was slowly swallowed by darkness. As the light footsteps disappeared, everything became quiet. In the apartment room, Bai Xiao was sitting on the sofa with cash and scattered coins on the small table in front of her. There are coins from 1 cent to 50 cents, $1 coins, and banknotes from $1 to $100. Bai Xiao calculated that the total banknotes amounted to $2,130, and there were about $50 in coins. It can only be said that this is a lot of money. It is the year 2000. Even in New York, the monthly income of an ordinary family is only about $3,000. With a family of 4 or 5, in terms of basic necessities, food, housing, and transportation, etc., the expenditure is only about $1,000. In terms of food, chicken breasts are $1.50 per pound, and lean beef is $3.50 per pound. For example, an average family of 7 only needs to spend about $1,560 to make a big purchase every week. It is conceivable that prices in the United States in this era are not that high. Especially in a place like New York. People like Bai Xiao who own a house do not need to pay rent. When they are alone, their monthly expenses are even less. The situation is definitely different now. Although he is alone now, he needs to take in more nutrients. It is completely different from the previous self. Especially after he hunted those 5 gangsters, his physical fitness once again experienced a surge. And the rate of increase is quite astonishing. He roughly calculated that the life essence obtained by the 5 people was about 10 times more than that of the dozen or so Xiao Qiang killed. However, the degree of physical strength was not the same. Killing the few gangsters who had bullied and robbed him would give him the change in strength of his physical fitness is probably in the range of 1 to 1.5 times. But it also proves one thing, that is, the previous conjecture that the difference between vitality and individuals should be comprehensive. This means that the higher the life level of the life individuals he kills, the more life essence he will obtain, and the greater the enhancement will be. Goo at this time, there was a cry in the stomach, and I was hungry. Apparently killing 5 people and ingesting the life essence brought about the sequelae of strengthening. He needs to maintain nutrition to ensure this normal demand that exceeds the physical fitness of ordinary people. Obviously he will need to spend a lot of money on food in the future. Bai Xiao touched his belly, stood up and walked to the old second-hand refrigerator, which contained food he spent more than $100 to buy, including lean beef, mutton, chicken breast, vegetables, etc. However, there are rewards for investment, and the extent of his returns is astonishing. Chapter 3. Bai Xiao enjoyed this meal very much. The portion was sufficient and the taste was suitable for his taste. A big pot of rice, beef stew with potatoes, scrambled eggs with tomatoes, vegetable salad, steak, lamb chops, etc. The way of eating tended to be Chinese. After all, although his parents were from Run, they were also Chinese. There was also a Chinatown in Queens, so the taste must be biased towards the east. Later, due to the geography and environment, there were more Western food styles. Under this influence, Bai Xiao was not unfamiliar with the preparation of some Eastern and Western food. Definitely Western food is relatively simple, with large quantities and high fat. It is very suitable for him now. While eating, he was also planning the next path. Compared with the next few years, the current year of 2000 is relatively quiet. At least there are not many major events that can threaten the world. Even if there are, the Sorcerer Supreme in Camartage is not a vegetarian. In short, he has a golden development period of nearly 10 years. He needs to develop on Earth for a period of time, and when he grows to a certain level, he can turn his attention to a higher level. The Earth is now a growing novice village. After more than a decade of settling, it will become a battlefield where various bosses are rampant and major events occur frequently. He definitely doesn't need to consider what will happen in more than a decade. His current positioning is very simple. He needs to strengthen himself by hunting people or monsters, but he is more inclined to ordinary people, or simply drug dealers and gang members. Those extraordinary life races such as vampires and werewolves are not yet something he can touch. Besides, he still has to find the other party. Hiding and developing is the first priority, which is why he wears a baseball cap, hood, gloves, plastic foot covers when killing people, and even the way of killing is the simplest and crudest, without bloodshed. He just doesn't want to leave any clues that can expose him at the scene. The targets he hunts are all criminals. In order to commit crimes, the villains choose to hide in places where there are no surveillance cameras. After all, in today's era, the popularity of cameras is not so great. This provides him with the most convenient killing environment. I need a set of equipment specifically for killing people, and I also need to learn hacking techniques to find information on the internet, or erase some of my own information to prevent people from tracking me, or recruit a top hacker. This is to be determined. In addition, I also need to learn fighting and killing skills, that is, I need to be proficient in the structure of the human body. It seems that I also need to learn medicine, and it is best to learn firearms. I also need to be familiar with the entire Queens district, and even the various districts in New York, so that when I take action, or evacuate the scene, I can prepare one or more evacuation routes for myself. After being strengthened, Xiao has a clear understanding of his plans. After 2 strengthenings, his physical fitness has reached the limit of human beings, perhaps about the level of Captain America Steve Rogers, who was injected with super gene serum, but in essence he is still a human being, and he has experienced World War II, is proficient in various firearms, and has multiple fighting skills. He is too different from them. He will not think that with Goldfinger, he can be unscrupulous in the future. Having a planned and rational growth route is the most correct choice. Kill people, gain life essence to strengthen himself, collect cash by the way, and also need in-depth learning. He needs to learn all the knowledge that is beneficial to his growth. The saying that knowledge is power is not empty talk, especially in this universe, it is completely literal. Xiao agreed on the follow-up plan. After finishing the remaining food, he picked up a large cup and drank the milk in it in one breath. Dong! The bottom of the cup gently hit the table, making a muffled sound. In the living room of this old house, this muffled sound, which was neither too loud nor too small, was like the death knell for the entire New York and even the world. A death god was quietly awakening. In the Queens police station in New York, Simon was furious in his office. He stood in front of the desk in a police uniform, slammed the documents in his hand on the table and roared, "FK, in just 4 months, the number of inexplicable murders in 4 months has exceeded 200. You know, there were only more than 300 murders in New York last year. We have almost reached this number in Queens in 4 months. What are we doing? What are our law enforcement officers doing? This is a waste of taxpayers' money." Simon was about to go crazy, and he was madly spitting foul language at the various police chiefs in front of him. Murder and shooting have never been a problem for New York and even the United States. Even in many murder cases, no clues can be found at all, resulting in the case becoming an unsolved case and being sealed in the archives. This is normal, but what is abnormal is that in his jurisdiction, the surge in the number of deaths in 4 months has almost exceeded the annual number of people in New York. What's more, none of these murder and shooting cases have been solved in the past 4 months. It can be said that he is about to become a laughingstock in the entire New York NYPD, and all his subordinates are good-for-nothings. For Simon, who has just taken over for less than 2 years, this will tarnish his career as a chief. The investigation committee will question his ability and start an investigation into him, and he is likely to step down. So how can Simon not be angry? Simon vented his anger, and none of the police chiefs present spoke up, and could only bear it silently. After all, they really got nothing in the past 4 months. "Sorry, sir, we set up a special investigation team, but the other party is very cunning and did not leave any clues at all." After Simon finished venting, he sat down on the chair weakly, holding his forehead with a headache, and one of the middle-aged white sheriffs finally spoke first. He did not shirk responsibility, but told everything. Since the number of murders reached nearly 100 in the second month, the police department finally noticed the weirdness. After the investigation, they linked some of the common points and decisively set up a serial murder investigation team to classify the same type of cases into one case. However, 2 months later, murders still emerged in an endless stream. They still did not find any useful information. For this reason, he and several other sheriffs were very troubled. It can only be said that the murderer is very cunning. Simon waved his hand weakly, "Tell me about the useful information." The middle-aged white sheriff put the document he had been holding in front of Chief Simon, opened it and said, the clue we know about the investigation is that all the people killed by this person are villains. Villain. Chapter 4. Yes, sir, they are all villains. Their identities and backgrounds are either gangsters who do nothing to rob, kill, buy, and sell drugs, or they are gang members who do all kinds of evil. In addition, the murderer should be one person, and he is proficient in counter-reconnaissance, crime, murder and other methods. His strength, speed, firearms, and fighting are all top-level figures. In addition, his criminal skills grew very quickly. In the first few murders, he left some useful and useless information, but in the subsequent murders, he left no information at all. On a rainy day 2 months ago, he sneaked into a small gang station with about 30 members. In that apartment, he first quietly assassinated the members of the outer guard. All of them died by being twisted. The neck was broken, or the throat bones were broken by a strong punch, and the person died of suffocation in a short period of time. Then we gradually progressed, destroyed the surveillance, and entered the center layer by layer until we killed several core gang members, including the boss. These gangs did not fire a single shot and showed no resistance at all. They all died. In addition, I believe that if there weren't a few prostitutes inside, maybe he would have turned on the gas, caused an explosion, and caused a fire to destroy all traces, as he did in some cases before and after. The sergeant slowly told all the clues that the investigation team had discovered. Simon was so angry that he leaned back in his chair and raised his hands in an incredulous manner. What is this? Batman? Is this Robin? He wants to kill all the villains and gangsters he thinks he is? Who does he think he is? It's not like this kind of person has never appeared before. After all, in a place like New York, money and crime are never separate. Where there is money, there will be crime. Where crime breeds, there is no shortage of righteous people. Maybe they can't stand it, maybe they can't stand it. They are members of the persecuted group, and there have been incidents in which they were punished for their sins. It's just that the overturn is always instantaneous, and these people basically have no good ending. White and black are never opposites, but more of exquisite grey. Once such an incident occurs, it is easy for both parties to cooperate tacitly and either be arrested or killed. Now there are people like this again, but their methods are more hidden and high level. Obviously in a top killer who thinks he's punishing criminals and villains. There was no unnecessary expression on the middle-aged police chief's face. Privately, he admired the murderer. He only targeted criminals and would not harm innocent people. But his identity was a police officer in the NYPD, so he had to do everything possible. Ways and means to catch this murderer. Okay, do you have a direction for the investigation? Simon was too lazy to think so much and spoke directly. We believe that this person may be a retired combat soldier with special characteristics. He may have some financial difficulties in life. When he commits crimes, he will skip the cash from the killed dead men. We have been collecting information in this regard. The sheriff said simply. Simon nodded. I don't care what means you use, you must capture the other party within a month. You can mobilize all the resources and strength. If necessary, you can report to me, and I will meet all your conditions. When he said this, his tone became more serious. Staring at the police chiefs present, I want a result. I want this person to go to jail. I want this kind of incident to stop happening. Do you understand? Yes, sir. The sheriffs responded in unison. Just at this moment, the landline on the desk rang. Simon waved and the police chiefs immediately left the office. Simon picked up the phone and answered it. I'm Simon. FBI? They need to be involved in this case? I get it. Simon hung up the phone and sat on the chair with some confusion. The police system is completely different from government agencies like the FBI. They are two completely independent systems. It is even said that the police system belongs to a private enterprise that is employed. There is no distinction between the two parties in terms of power. The FBI seems to be very famous in the outside world. In fact, the police system does not need to offend the other party in its work. Unless there is a direct order from the top. There have also been conflicts between the two sides. As for this serial murder case, the impact is too great. If it were Simon in the past, or the police system, there would be no need for the FBI to intervene. However, this case is too bad and the investigation is too difficult. The FBI is not stupid. If the other party intervenes at this time, it is okay to solve it. Both parties have credit. However, if the investigation is not solved or it is not perfect, then the FBI will have to bear the responsibility, and the police will need to bear part of the responsibility. It is an obvious gambling behavior, or the gain and the effort are not directly proportional. But for Simon, this is a good thing. If the FBI wants to take the initiative, no matter what the reason, he welcomes it. At least he can shirk part of the responsibility regardless of whether the case is solved or not. Thinking of this, he picked up the phone again. Call George to come in. Yes, sir. After hanging up the phone, a white police chief in his 30s knocked on the door, then opened the door and walked in to see Chief Simon. Chief George, people from the FBI will come to the police station soon to join the investigation team. You are responsible for connecting with them. Sir, that authority. I'm on the same level as you. The two sides are cooperative. There is no distinction between superior and inferior. You are responsible for supervising the work. Simon made it very clear. George understood. Don't let the FBI people mess around. After all, the FBI's style is different from that of the police. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Simon looked at George leaving, thought for a moment, and picked up the phone again. I'm Simon. An hour later, a black Chevrolet SUV stopped in front of the Queens Police Department. As the door opened, 4 people stepped out, 3 men and 1 woman. George was already waiting. When he saw the 4 people, they shook hands respectively. The leading middle-aged white man had a gentle expression and spoke first. Chief George? I'm Phil Carlson. Agent Phil Carlson, I'm in charge of your reception. Thank you. I hope we can have a pleasant cooperation. Chapter 5. It rained heavily in New York that day. The heavy rain makes today seem a bit extraordinary. On 163rd Street and 89th Avenue in Jamaica, Queens, there are houses, merchandise stores, etc. on both sides of the street, but they all have the American style of the 2000s. There are signs everywhere on the walls. Various styles of graffiti. Similarly, people of all colors live here, with rich racial diversity, but they are poor and backward. Multi-ethnicity also means chaos. There are many gangs of various sizes around here. However, the gangs in Queens have been very quiet recently, very quiet, and even the crime rate has dropped a lot. The biggest reason is that a serial murder case has been ongoing in the past 4 months. The targets who were killed were either robbing gangsters or members of gangs. The death toll reached more than 200, which is nothing short of a very horrifying number. Gangsters have always done all kinds of evil, even trampling on lives and trampling on the law, but in this era, there are very few people who can make them pay the price, but now a guy like Death God has appeared. He is like a ghost who is everywhere, traveling through the darkness, looking for them and harvesting their lives. They also tried to find him, secretly united, and issued a reward to catch this terrible guy. However, it had no effect, and the ghost continued to harvest lives, so much so that many gangs in Queens moved out of the area out of fear. He gave up his territory for this. There are definitely some who are afraid, and naturally there are some who are not. One of them is Herman Ode, a Hispanic. When it was founded, it was actually in prison. He absorbed many Hispanic prisoners and created the Herman Odia Gunslingers, which dominated both inside and outside the prison, and occupied a large territory in Queens. Each of their members has a real file-sized pistol tattoo on their lower abdomen, and their management is strict and traditional. He has ties to Mexican drug traffickers and engages in home invasions, carjackings, assaults, and murders. Since its establishment, there have been about 200 members, and they have definitely done more for them. These 200 or so are more of the core members, and each of them holds a large number of firearms and is a gunman who maintains gunfights. The gunslinger Herman Ode can only be described as having a vicious reputation. Due to the complex network of interests, the NYPD rarely goes to trouble them. But today, the footsteps of Death God have approached them, and the rainy night of this day will wash away the sins and blood. Herman Ode's territory spans more than a dozen streets, but their location is in an apartment building on 163rd Street and 89th Avenue in Jamaica. It is surrounded by bars, commodity stores, and supermarkets on both sides, and there are basically no residential buildings. The environment here is relatively complex. There are many specially opened back doors and basements. When attacked, you can fight the enemy through the complex environment, hide in the basement, or escape through the back door. While being public, he also has his own caution. This is the survival law of gangsters. Boom! There was thunder in the sky and heavy rain, but it still couldn't block the bright lights and wine bar from welcoming guests. Cars and motorcycles were parked in the parking lot in front of the bar, and people kept pouring into the bar. Ladies and their male companions, who were dressed revealingly, proud of their figures, and wearing heavy makeup, gathered in groups, ready to enjoy the night. In contrast, not far away, there stood an apartment building with old bricks and tiles, a tall yard in front of it, and barbed wire and other things. There were also special secret sentries and surveillance cameras around the apartment building. In establishing the defense line of the base camp, Herman Ode had done his best. However, he still couldn't prevent the death god from approaching. The hustle and bustle of the bar and the heavy rain covered up some traces. Under the black curtain and rain curtain, no one noticed that on the top floor of a building not far away from the apartment building, a figure was silently observing the situation around the apartment building, scanning it with sharp eyes one by one. Seeing through the sentry standing guard in the dark, the heavy rain could not block his vision. His eyes, like those of an eagle, observed the location of the surveillance. Finally, he turned his gaze to the apartment building that was more than 10 stories high. He squatted slightly, and then suddenly jumped with force. Bang! With a muffled sound, his figure pierced through the rain curtain like a sharp arrow, spanning a distance and height of dozens of meters, and finally came to a window at the highest point of the apartment entrance. He grabbed the windowsill with his gloved fingers, gently pushed open the unlocked window, and landed neatly with a flip. This is a room with a bed and a bathroom, but no one. While clinging to the windowsill, he glanced and saw that there was no surveillance camera, so he closed the window casually, walked to the door with light steps, closed his eyes against the door, and magnified his senses. In an instant, dense information flooded into his brain. Hearing and smell are enlarged. The powerful hearing sense cooperates with the smell sense, just like a scanner, scanning the entire building instantly, and constructing a 3D architectural picture in the brain. In this virtual picture, figures and information are being established. The movement of people, the completely different but intertwined smells, stench, smoke, body odor, the metal smell of guns, the smell of alcohol, etc., and the vibration frequency of sound. Soon, the visitor opened his eyes. When he heard a footstep approaching slowly, he stepped back slightly and dodged to the gap of the door. With the twist of the door handle, the door was opened, and a person walked in. Just as he stepped in, he turned around and wanted to close the door, and a hand covered his mouth and nose. The man was suddenly startled. Before he could react, a sharp pain came, and the next second, he lost consciousness. The body was gently dragged by the visitor, who casually put the person on the ground, opened the door and walked out. He glanced at the camera in the corner above the end of the passage, without any expression, but quickened his pace and came to the spiral staircase. He supported the railing with one hand and jumped down, falling from a height of more than 10 floors to the bottom of the building. Bang! There was a dull sound when he fell to the ground on the first floor, and his figure just squatted slightly without any abnormality. The staircase was a corner, and the corner was the living room. It seemed that he heard some sound. 2 people came over from the living room. Just after stepping into the corner, 2 fists with gloves came towards him. As fast as lightning, it hit the neck accurately. There were 2 clicks, and the neck collapsed. The 2 instinctively covered their necks and staggered back 2 steps. With expressions of despair and pain, they fell to the ground. Chapter 6. The sound of the 2 people's deaths obviously alerted the gunmen in Herman Oder in the living room on the first floor. They were already on alert and immediately took out their weapons and pointed them in the direction where the bodies fell to the ground. Someone broke into the apartment, cordoned off the apartment, everything was on alert. Control room, declare alert status. The guy is on the first floor of the stairs. He may be fleeing upwards. Everyone, please pay attention. Loud roars created a commotion, sending messages to the control room through the communicator. The control room immediately pressed the alarm bell, putting everyone in the apartment on alert. A dozen gunmen on the first floor gathered, aimed at the corner of the stairs, and slowly moved forward. I believe that no matter who it is impossible to escape the gunfire from more than a dozen gun points. However, what they don't know is that the enemy they are facing at this moment is not an ordinary person at all. Just a few meters away from the corner of the stairway, a handful of tiny gravels suddenly shot out like bullets. Caught off guard, the dozen gunmen didn't react at all and were pierced in an instant, layer upon layer of blood mist. Flying, screams of agony resounded. Immediately, a figure wearing a black hooded cap and a mask whose face could not be seen clearly came out. Looking at the gunman who was lying on the ground screaming and still alive, he walked forward, bent down, picked up 2 guns, and fired at the gunman. A few people's foreheads were pressed, and the trigger was pulled indifferently. Boom! 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 After several gunshots, the figure turned around and walked towards a certain direction on the first floor without hesitation. It was a long passage. At the end of the passage was a door, which was obviously the back door. There were several rooms on both sides of the passage. He passed by a room, raised his gun, pointed it at the door and pulled the trigger. Boom! The bullet penetrated the door and also penetrated the head of a gunman who was hiding behind the door. After dealing with it, he turned around and returned to his original position. While skillfully checking the 2 guns in his hands, he walked up the stairs. When he was approaching the 2nd floor, his eyes under the brim of his hat flickered slightly, watching. There was no hesitation at the passage on the 2nd floor above, and his legs suddenly exerted force. The whole person exploded like a cheetah. As he rushed to the 2nd floor, his body spun in the air. There were more than 20 gunmen ambushing the walls on both sides. As a result, there was no time to react. The person opened his hands and pulled the trigger. Boom! 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 The muzzle of the gun continued to bloom with flames, and bullets accurately hit the gunmen's fatal parts, such as their foreheads, temples, eyes, etc. In less than 2 seconds, the 24 ambushed gunmen died instantly. The bullet capacity was also exhausted. Without too much hesitation, he turned around and continued towards the 3rd floor. While running, he replaced the magazines for the 2 guns in his hands. His movements were smooth and quick. When he reached the 3rd floor, he had already replaced the magazine. When the killing begins, he is like a death god, accompanied by gunfire, harvesting lives one after another, starting the killing layer by layer. These gunmen from Herman Oder have no way to escape, except by jumping off the building. However, how could the gunmen, whose morale had not yet collapsed, choose to escape? So what greeted them were ruthless bullets. The number of people has no effect at all on the mysterious enemy, because the movements are too fast, so fast that ordinary people cannot react at all, and the accuracy of the spear is terrifying. Before they can react, the bullet has already hit their forehead. The process lasted less than 10 minutes. All the gunmen in the entire apartment were killed, except for some of the female slaves in the apartment. Including the leader himself, Herman Odd, died in the office. Perhaps Herman Odd himself never thought that today would be the day they were destroyed. The last picture he was given was of the mysterious man wearing a black sweatshirt hood, black sweatpants, black gloves, and a mask, accurately shooting or easily twisting off the few core gunmen left in the office. At the door, holding the pistol that symbolized death, the muzzle of the gun was pointed at himself, the bright gunfire bloomed, and he also ushered in death. In front of He-Man Od's office, Bai Xiao glanced at He-Man Od lying on the ground indifferently, and the corners of Bai Xiao's mouth curved under his mask. Another good harvest day. Instead of searching, he went to the control room on the 3rd floor. In order to quickly kill all the gunmen, he raided in a blitzkrieg style. After killing several surveillance personnel in the control room, he continued to move up the apartment building 1 floor without stopping. Rising. Coming to the monitoring room, the current monitoring system basically uses VCR storage, that is, a video recorder. There are definitely more advanced monitoring technologies, but it is obviously impossible for these gangs to use these technologies. That kind of technology can only exist in certain government agencies. He found the tape, pulled it out, turned off the surveillance system, and left quickly. Bai Xiao knew that his killing spree in Queens would definitely attract great attention. Although there was heavy rain outside, the continuous gunshots might still attract attention. He left decisively. The heavy rain would wash away all traces and smells belonging to him. And just 10 minutes after Bai Xiao evacuated, police cars stopped at the door of the apartment. Boom! At the moment, the thunder in the sky became more and more violent, and lightning pierced the night, making this day even more weird. The joint investigation team, police officers, sergeants, and forensic doctors came down and started working in an orderly manner, setting up a cordon and surveying the scene. 4 people got out of one of the black Chevrolet SUVs, and they were FBI agents headed by Phil Cowlson. These FBI agents were very patient and waited patiently for the on-site investigation. They did not take advantage of their status to go their own way. It was not until the site investigation on the first, second, and third floors was completed that Phil Coulson and several other detectives, led by Chief George, entered the scene. However, everyone put on shoe covers, gloves, and hats. Just don't leave any unnecessary footprints or hair on the site. What the hell, I've never seen such a weird scene. Sheriff George, who was following Agent Phil Coulson, frowned. Chapter 7. Phil Coulson and one of the female detectives looked at each other without saying a word, but carefully observed from the first floor to the third floor, then one floor to the top floor, and finally returned to the death scene in Herman Oder's office. Phil Coulson, the female detective, and Chief George, were in Herman Old's office with several medical examiners. Phil Coulson was the first to speak. This should be the last place the killer came to. Why do you say that? Sheriff George was a little confused. This is the execution of ritual crimes. Phil Coulson explained, or it is a habit set by the criminal, who will execute the most vicious criminal. Chief George raised his eyebrows. He became the chief because of his resume. He solved many crimes. For senior police officers, the biggest gain that time brings them is criminal experience. He understood what Agent Phil Coulson meant in an instant, and then glanced at the FBI agent in front of him in surprise. It is obviously unexpected that this agent has a deep research on criminal psychology. But he didn't say anything, but nodded. I'll go to the rooftop and have a look. Phil Coulson said something again and then turned and left the office. The female agent followed closely behind. George frowned and looked at the backs of the two of them. After thinking about it for a while, he still didn't follow. The other party's words obviously didn't mean that he wanted to take them with him. Phil Coulson and the female agent came out to the rooftop, took off their clean shoe covers, held an umbrella, and scanned the rooftop with a flashlight despite the heavy rain, but found nothing else. In the end, the two of them stood on the edge of the rooftop, overlooking the police cars with police lights hanging below, and the police forensics officers who were constantly coming and going. How does it feel? Natasha Romanoff. He's a very interesting person. I think it would be more appropriate for the director to ask Hawkeye to come here. The agent named Natasha Romanoff said softly with a charming curve on her lips. He has another mission. Only such a person can bring out your greatest ability and value. I believe the director thinks so too, and that's why he sent you to carry out this mission. Phil Coulson said gently. Natasha Romanoff didn't say much. She knew her value to Shield. Do you have any direction for this guy like Death God? Top physical condition, top marksmanship, top IQ, clear goals and ideas, very difficult to deal with, it's not easy to find this guy. Natasha Romanoff sighed and answered Phil Coulson's words. After a pause, he continued. He has a body that reaches or even exceeds human limits. His strength, speed, and reflexes are all beyond my imagination. In addition, his marksmanship is very superb. Only with the support of all these conditions can he complete this massacre. In addition, when he broke into this place, he had already made a clear plan, the attack method, the evacuation route, and the timing. Believe me, although they are a group of gangsters, they can kill so many gunmen in a short period of time, and evacuate without any damage before we arrive here, without leaving a trace. There are almost no such people in the whole world. Natasha Romanoff made a rational analysis. Yes, so why does the director value this guy? If such a person continues to let him go, it will not be a good thing for the stability of society. Phil Coulson also had a headache. Based on the current conditions, not to mention the follow-up work, finding this guy first and then locking him in is originally a huge amount of problem. Even if he has huge resources behind him, this is an extremely time-consuming task. It can be regarded as the most troublesome and the most clueless time he has ever had since carrying out the mission. He was not sure whether he could complete this mission. Do you think he's a mutant? Maybe. Natasha Romanoff did not give a definite answer, but his growth rate is amazing, and he should be in a low-income group at the beginning. From the beginning of the first case, cash was taken from the person who was killed. With so many cases piling up, a large amount of cash should have been collected. The way to start the killing was the simplest and most violent way of killing with bare hands, and then to the subsequent target. The number of people increased and they turned to firearms. After Phil Coulson finished speaking, he shook his head and denied the last words. No, those guns should have been collected from the people who were killed. In addition, his need for money is not great. He has not been collecting cash since the previous murders. Perhaps he realized that the NYPD had begun to take it seriously. In order to give himself time to evacuate, he gave up collecting cash. Natasha Romanoff added, so, he is an extremely rational person, and his IQ must be very high. The only thing he is not sure about is what's more, his marksmanship. Yes, he has been very accurate since the first case when he used firearms. If he originally had it, his resume and age should be over 20 years old. Phil Coulson agreed, but if he has improved his environment through subsequent practice and developed top shooting skills, then he may not be too old. Two possibilities are that he is a retired soldier from the military or a special force. The second possibility is that he is a young man from a poor family. For some reason, his family environment has suffered a huge loss. The blow, I guess, may have been gang-related, causing him to awaken some of his abilities. After a period of exploration, he started killing people for the first time and gradually learned and grew. Natasha Romanoff first nodded in agreement, then shook her head. The first case reported by the investigation team may not be his first murder. His first murder should be even earlier. Phil Coulson thought for a while, recalled the file data of the first death in the investigation, and suddenly realized, you mean, his killing skills have already matured in the first murder case of the investigation team. No matter who it is, no matter it is a serial murder case, the first murder must be unskilled, and there will be some scrawled marks. Later, as the number of killings and the number of people increase, the killing methods have begun to grow, mature, and become proficient. The conclusion shown on the body of the first decedent in the death file of the investigation team is that the murderer's skills were mature in the first murder, simple, crude and effective. Chapter 8. Yes, so that case will definitely not be the first time the murderer kills someone. Natasha Romanoff said firmly. It seems that Chief George and others still have reservations about us. Phil Coulson laughed. What they can think of, the people in the investigation team can't think of. That was an investigation team set up to investigate such a major serial murder case. Every member was an experienced criminal investigation police officer. Who didn't have some experience in solving major and important cases? These are definitely not idiots. So obviously the NYPD has reservations about these FBI agents, but Phil Coulson is not angry. Originally, he doesn't care about this. He has only one goal, to find the murderer and contact the murderer. As for the credit for solving the case, he doesn't need it at all. The fundamental purposes are different, so there is no need to be angry about them. If the investigation team can find the murderer, it will be too late for him. Queens is the murderer's area of activity. Coupled with these conditions, it seems that a large-scale investigation is needed. Queens has a population of 7 to 8 million, so the difficulty of this investigation can be imagined. Phil Coulson expressed helplessness, then looked at Natasha Romanoff. So, we need you to use another way of thinking to find the answer, Natasha Romanoff. Looks like I need to go it alone. Natasha Romanoff raised her thin eyebrows. Her charming and mature temperament could not be concealed even under heavy rain. I will obtain first-hand intelligence clues from the investigation team, and I will notify you as soon as I find any new findings. By the way, what would you do if you found him? Phil Coulson asked curiously. How to do it? Definitely do the same, observe. Natasha Romanoff smiled half-heartedly, then turned around. Boom. The heavy rain continued. In the small house that belonged to Xiao, he took off his hood and peaked cap, took off all his clothes and threw them into the new washing machine. After turning on the automatic washing machine, he went to the bathroom naked. Start washing. Both the clothes and the body exuded a strong smell of gunpowder smoke, which was caused by a large number of shootings. What's more, after going back and forth in the heavy rain, the body was also wet from the rain. While washing, feel the changes in your body. It still feels familiar, as if the whole body is soaked in a hot spring, and the cells, bones, skin, internal organs, thinking, etc. are all sublimating with joy. It was a unique change in the level of life, very warm and wonderful. The water sprayed from the rain continued to splash on his body, caressing his white and beautiful muscles and skin. It's clearer. This feeling is. Xiao raised his hand and stared at his fingertips. A golden light that was not too dazzling bloomed inexplicably on his fingertips. This was a kind of energy, an energy that was born after the last massacre of a gang. The nature of this energy is very weak, so weak that Xiao can only use it to emit light at first, and at most it can be used as a flashlight. But now, the massacre of the entire Hermanod gang members not only strengthened his physical fitness, but also caused the energy in his body to skyrocket, so that he could clearly feel the energy in his body, and even use it like an instinct. For example, as long as he wants to, he can shoot out from his fingertips in the form of a laser, similar to the laser of the sparkling fruit. As for how powerful it is, Bai Xiao is still unable to know, but he has an inexplicable feeling, or it may be said that his original ability is a kind of information control. If all this energy in the body was emitted as a laser, it would be enough to easily blow up a house of about 100 square meters. Bai Xiao's heart is full of joy, and he has gone further and further on the road of not being a human being. I am grateful to the guys who contributed to his growth. I just hope that in hell, they can still live as dead souls, so that one day he can go to hell to harvest a wave. As for whether he can still see it at that time, it has to be said separately. As for the body's energy, he temporarily calls it magic power. It's similar to the one in Fate, but it's a pity that he doesn't have such a thing as a noble phantasm. However, the sudden birth of magic power also gave Bai Xiao more new directions for the next road. Originally, Bai Xiao thought that he would purely follow the body strengthening trend, like his ancestors and Superman. As a result, the emergence of magic power gave Bai Xiao a new direction. Bai Xiao's road becomes wider. After all, Superman is only as strong as he is strong. Unless he is a gold super or a silver super thinking super, he will be defeated in the face of powerful magic. Bai Xiao doesn't want to let himself have any shortcomings. Maybe he should get in touch with Kamartaj and at least have enough knowledge about magic. Knowledge will never betray you. After the light on his fingertips dissipated, Bai Xiao vigorously washed his body covered in gunpowder smoke, wiped his wet hair and body, and put on a brand new set of clothes, simple outfit, jeans, t-shirt and sneakers. It is completely in line with the simple outfits of this era, highlighting youth and handsomeness, especially after Bai Xiao has strengthened her body. She is just a clothes hanger and looks handsome no matter what she wears. When I came to the living room, I took out a lot of ingredients from the refrigerator and made cooking food as usual. The feast after each massacre has a sense of ritual after Hannibal's murder. It's just that Hannibal really eats people, while Bai Xiao kills people and plunders the essence of life to feed himself back. After preparing a large table of food, under the pouring rain and dim light, Bai Xiao enjoyed eating after feeling hungry. This process was wonderful. While enjoying the feeling of fullness brought by the food, I was thinking about some other issues. 4 months after he started massacring a large number of gangsters and gang members in Queens, it had caused quite a sensation and turmoil. Bai Xiao was fully prepared before every killing, especially the use of firearms. His physical fitness and bone strength allow him to ignore the recoil caused by every shot, and his ultra-fast reaction nerves and dynamic vision allow him to be confident enough when shooting. It's like the marksmen in the army shooting fixed targets. In essence, he is a genius, or a genius who evolved from day to day. How about practicing shooting? What kind of gun practice? At the death scene, after the murder, he carefully fired many shots with the gun left at the scene, using his own memory and muscle memory to remember the moment when he fired. Then it gradually began to change from large-scale melee combat and small-scale shooting to large-scale use of guns. He has mastered the ultimate marksmanship in actual combat, which can also give the NYPD the illusion that the murderer is a sharpshooter. A young Asian like him naturally has nothing to do with the shooting skills that require a lot of practice to develop in actual combat. The only things that need attention may be the smoke reaction and the destruction of plastic foot covers. Chapter 9. Beyond that, killing people with guns is too efficient. And he also likes the feeling of killing someone with a gun. Originally, there was a simpler way to kill people, which was to use huge amounts of explosives, such as bombs, chemical explosives extracted and synthesized. After a few waves, they could be sent away regardless of the number of people. But many times, in addition to the original gang members themselves, there are also some female gang members and other more or less innocent people in those gangs. To kill these people, Bai Xiao still couldn't get over it. He doesn't want to be a person with no bottom line at all. What's more, there is a sorcerer supreme ancient one on the earth. He doesn't know if he really wants to completely become a god of death with no bottom line. Will the bald female magician suddenly appear directly? Send him off. Bai Xiao knew that he could still jump around now, and every minute and every second he was jumping left and right on the road to death. Bai Xiao was not sure whether he would be discovered by the Ancient One, but he believed that there was a high probability that he would be aware of it. With the appearance of Bai Xiao, the greater the noise he makes, the greater the changes will be to the future timeline. Will a magician like Ancient One who likes to play with time not notice this change? As for finding the source, it is very difficult for Ancient One. Bai Xiao himself does not believe it. He believes that the Ancient One has not found him yet, either because Dormammu, the Dark King who has been coveting this universe, has delayed time, or the other party is probably observing in secret. Therefore, Bai Xiao thought that it was better to be honest when he was still weak. To become an ancestor, he had to become the Heavenly Father to be qualified. Unexpectedly, the direction he has shown now is to kill people who have committed serious crimes. In the future, he will also actively kill werewolves, vampires, demons, and other monsters that can threaten the earth. While the future unfolds, it's important to leave a good impression on Ancient One in the early stages. After all, he did have this plan. Starting from one's own original interests, establishing a good relationship with Kamartaj and Ancient One is a good choice. The safe and stable channel for obtaining magical knowledge is Kamartaj, and definitely the Dark God book, but this thing has quite a scary debuff. If you look at this thing and learn the black magic inside, you will easily be corrupted in your soul, and even be targeted by an old god. Not worth it at all. After taking these factors into consideration, Bai Xiao knew that his follow-up plan should be carried out in advance. Based on his current life level, unless he is surrounded by a large-scale army and missiles wash away the ground, his single-body combat ability will already be in place. The world is considered to be ranked. As long as they don't provoke opponents like Professor, definitely Bai Xiao will not be proud or high-profile because of this. Before he thinks he can become an ancestor, stability is the most important thing. The actual implementation of the follow-up road and plan will be somewhat different from reality, but there is a main line running through it, and Bai Xiao doesn't care about side details. After all, accidents in reality are always unpredictable. In addition, Queens is now under tight control. The police have not mentioned the continuous massacres over the past 4 months, and the gangs are not all fools. The Herman's Old Guns are one of the most prominent gangs in Queens. All the Herman's Old Guns have been killed. The gangs here will definitely give up this area. No one wants to suddenly have Death God knocking on the door that day. The police are tightening their grip again, and Bai Xiao plans to expand his business scope. In fact, he is too lazy to kill shrimps and the like. He has already felt that the life essence of 1 or 2 lives has gradually reduced his strengthening efficiency. Mainly because his life level has reached the level of extraordinary life. To put it bluntly, it means that his level is high. The experience given by mobs becomes less. It can only be accumulated by quantity. The efficiency is too low, so he has to find some supernatural beings to kill, such as mutants, werewolves, and vampires. Spend this period of time to polish your physical fitness after strengthening, and your mastery of strength must be up to standard. This is considered a kind of obsessive-compulsive disorder, and it is also beneficial to you. Sleep. It was already evening, and a feeling of sleepiness began to hit. Bai Xiao stretched, washed the dishes, and returned to the room to prepare for sleep. As for the waves and storms caused outside, he had nothing to do with it. Hell's Kitchen is one of the most chaotic and peaceful areas in New York. The chaos is because there are a large number of gangs here. There are countless cases of burning, killing and looting. Fighting between gangs and land grabbing are also endless. The residents living here wake up every day and pray that bad luck will not happen. The police here can't clean up the crime here. In other words, due to the entanglement of various interests, the NYPD was unable and could not forcefully attack, thus forming an extremely unique area in New York. Peace is because of one person. A gang leader named Kingpin, who controlled a large number of thugs and gunmen, ruled the entire Hell's Kitchen and even the New York underground underworld. He maintained a certain kind of peace in Hell's Kitchen and also formulated rules. Under a tough-minded ruler, Hell's Kitchen maintains a very different kind of peace. Kingpin knew very well that Hell's Kitchen can be chaotic, but it cannot be so chaotic that the government and NYPD pay absolute attention to it, thinking that this is an area that will only produce garbage instead of profit. Then it will be mercilessly treated like a cancer. Cut off. Kingpin's existence is undoubtedly an existence that makes the gangs in Hell's Kitchen fear him. There is a building in Hell's Kitchen, and in the huge, spacious, and luxurious office on the top floor of the building, a fat, bald man who is about 1.9 meters tall and wearing a grey and white suit is sitting on a specially customized chair, flipping through some important documents in his hands. At this time, there was a knock on the door, then the door handle twisted, and a figure walked over. Got a mission? This is a slightly aged man with a circular bullseye pattern tattooed on his forehead. Facing the terrifying man in front of him, his expression is very cold, without fear or fear, just like an employee facing his employer. In fact, the relationship between him and the man in front of him was that of employee and employer. A guy called the Butcher appeared in Queens. Take a look. I'm very interested in him, Bullseye. The fat bald man showed a ferocious smile, and placed the document in front of Bullseye with a handful of rings. Chapter 10. Bullseye glanced at the man in front of him, his eyes flickered, and he seemed to have some interest in the guy he was talking about called Death God. Butcher? He casually picked up the file and looked it up. When he saw the contents of the file, his expression changed slightly. He slaughtered more than 200 people in 4 months? He was truly an out-and-out butcher. Actually, there were 500 people. Just yesterday, more than 200 gunmen, including Herman Od himself, were shot dead in his office in Queens. After hearing these words, Bullseye put down the document and drew a cold arc at the corner of his mouth. You think he's a threat? Mr. Kingpin. The man in front of him is clearly one of the largest gang leaders in New York, Kingpin. Jin Bin crossed his hands and held his chin, giving a completely opposite answer. No, I think he is an excellent warrior, killer, and assassin. I'm interested in him, he repeated again. You want to conquer him? This is not a good choice. Bullseye immediately frowned. He was confident and proud of his ability, but that didn't mean he was a fool. The resume shown in the document can already be seen from the ability shown by the other party. He is a very difficult opponent. If he wants to kill the opponent, he needs to find it through time, and he also needs to prepare enough plans for the assassination to be successful. If face to face, it is unknown whether he can defeat the opponent, let alone to capture him alive before Kingpin. The only people he massacred were gangsters. You should have a certain mentality towards gangsters. Your identity is already destined to be unable to conquer him. Just a try. If it doesn't work, kill him. Kingpin does not intend to give up. Now he is going smoothly. He believes that as long as he has enough conditions, he can make anyone serve him. But if he can't do it, then he won't show mercy. Okay, but the price won't be low. I will give you a satisfactory reward, Bullseye. Jin didn't take it seriously. As long as he can achieve his goal, he will never be stingy with money. Bullseye nodded, then took the document and turned to leave. Kingpin took out a cigar from the cigarette box and held it in his mouth. He stood up and came to the huge floor-to-ceiling window behind him, overlooking the streets and buildings below, as if he was overlooking his own kingdom. He is like a giant who is creating his own legend, and a legendary emperor needs more helpers. He was sure of it. Will the guy called the Butcher become his excellent assistant? Time has passed by a month. At the moment, it is already September. Autumn has quietly arrived, the temperature has gradually dropped from the hot weather, and the citizens of New York have already put on autumn clothes. It's still Queens, and Bai Xiao still lives in his old house. His house is the third floor of a large apartment building. Bai Xiao woke up from his sleep. After washing, he put on a grey sweater, a black sweatshirt, sweatpants, and white sneakers. He was ready to go out. He was young and strong, fully displaying his youthful appearance and temperament. Opening the door, 2 people walked in the side passage. A black ant and a middle-aged man. Hey, good morning, little John. Seeing Bai Xiao who was about to go out, the black ant greeted her warmly. John. Xiao is his English name. After all, he has to adapt to this place. Bai Xiao also responded politely, good morning, Aunt Mary. Wow, you look really changed now. It's time for you to grow taller. Would you like Aunt Mary to introduce you to a beautiful girlfriend? This black ant has a cheerful personality and a sense of humor. Bai Xiao knew that the black ant was joking with him. He showed appropriate shyness and waved his hand, I'm going for a morning jog. Goodbye, Aunt Mary. Oh, by the way, be careful lately. I heard that a serial killer has appeared in Queens. I know, Aunt Mary. Bai Xiao nodded seriously and left. As for the middle-aged man, Bai Xiao just nodded. He didn't know this man. Judging from his temperament, he should just be a tenant here to rent a house. There won't be much intersection between the two sides. What a nice kid, it's a pity. Mary's tone contained admiration and regret for Bai Xiao. As a neighbor, she definitely knew what this 17-year-old child had gone through. However, in the past 6 months, it seems that this child has found his own rhythm of life again. Bai Xiao's hearing was already beyond ordinary people's. He definitely heard what Mary behind him said, but he didn't pay attention. He is no longer the child who was confused because of the death of his parents. Although he has the original memory of this body and the feelings for the loving parents in his memory, it cannot affect him originally, and his character does not. Will change due to memory. It is worth mentioning that after he came to this body, his memory was actually not complete at first. Because he had just started traveling through time, the brain of an ordinary person could not fully receive the memories of another person for more than 10 years. The sudden influx of such huge information might cause the brain to overload the nerves and collapse. The brain automatically processed and blocked a large amount of useless information. Later, with the appearance of Goldfinger, he fully strengthened, including the brain, and the amount of information processed increased, and he received all the memories of this body. This is definitely just a small episode, and as long as it doesn't affect his original nature, he will basically ignore this experience. Since he has been killing gang members crazily in Queens for 4 months, the crime rate in Queens has plummeted. Some gangsters have their own way. Knowing that there is a terrifying death god killing people in Queens, they are afraid that they will also be killed. After being targeted, like those gangsters, he either ran away or simply stayed at home and did not go out. So although Bai Xiao didn't take action for a month, he still remained relatively calm. The number of people jogging in Queens has also increased in the morning. When jogging early in the morning, you can see many people jogging on the roadside. Bai Xiao gets up early and runs in the morning mainly to feel the subtle changes in the body in the simplest way, and to gain a perception of muscle tissue utilization in this way. To put it bluntly, he is definitely bored. Now he is not short of money and no longer has to go to work. He stays at home every day, or learns a lot of knowledge through the newly purchased computer or books, including chemistry, physics, fighting, shooting, etc. The strengthened brain processes information at an astonishing speed, giving it a powerful ability to accelerate learning. It can learn and master a certain skill, such as shooting, in a few seconds. He who has never had shooting experience before can learn it through actual combat. After shooting, it can be seen that he has become a top sharpshooter. With a clear photographic memory and perfect recall, he can never forget anything he sees. Bai Xiao will not waste these abilities. Chapter 11. 1 month of study has given him a sufficient understanding of physics, chemistry, electronics, and IT computers. Especially in IT, this is what he focuses on. So much so that now he is considered a pretty good computer expert, but he was still distracted from his studies. If he focuses on this aspect, it will only be a matter of time before he becomes the world's top hacker. These are just episodes. Bai Xiao enjoys the process of growing up, and the accumulation of knowledge is also a part of growth. When a person has a goal, he will have a feeling of struggle no matter what he is doing. He knows that every piece of knowledge he learns is part of his growth, and he will not find this process boring in the past. The early morning sun shines on the street, and the light and shadow shine through the branches of the trees nearby, which is very beautiful. Bai Xiao ran calmly, feeling the vitality of this strong body, and it felt wonderful. Running, he came to Flushing Meadows Park in Queens, which is the second largest park in New York. It has a variety of activity facilities, sports fields, swimming pools, children's playgrounds, bicycle trails, zoos, and various arts. The installations and monuments, the scenery are outstanding. The nearly hour-long morning jog did not make him sweat. He returned to the neighborhood of his apartment building and came to a breakfast shop. The breakfast shop is not unique. It is a popular breakfast shop nearby. It offers sushi and pork sandwiches, egg and bacon, avocado and egg whole wheat bread, etc. Bai Xiao feels that it is pretty good. Basically, he will come here to enjoy breakfast, and the price is relatively good. Affordable. Bai Xiao buys much more breakfast than an adult, but it doesn't exceed the normal range. Even if someone is surprised, seeing Bai Xiao's still young face and strong body, they will only think that it is normal to have a bigger appetite as you grow older. Holding the plate, he glanced around the breakfast shop. It was so popular that there was only one empty seat by the window. He walked to the seat and sat down to enjoy it. In addition, he could hear people in the shop discussing a topic animatedly. That's the latest serial killer in Queens. Have you heard that the butcher killed more than 200 people? Oh my god, he has killed more than 500 people now. It's so terrifying. I even want to leave Queens. Yes, he is a butcher, but he is also a hero. The people he slaughtered are the real villains. They committed all kinds of evil, including selling drugs, burning, killing and looting. These people should go to hell. Yes, he is so cool. He is like the death god in the night, harvesting sin. Some of my friends and I are his supporters and admirers. Looking at everything he's done recently, I think he didn't bring panic to the people, but he made those damn bastards afraid. Cowardice lurks in the shadows, and there's peace in Queens. I thought he was just crazy. Okay, man, but don't say it to anyone, because that guy in Queens has a lot of fans, and those people might behave badly toward you because of what you say. Obviously, Bai Xiao's crazy massacre attracted the attention of the people of Queens, or even the entire New York City public. It can be clearly heard from the conversations of these people that his massacres against gangs and gangsters did not cause panic among all the people. On the contrary, his targeted massacres gave him a large number of fans. Even when some gang members were killed, the girls and innocent people were safe and sound, which made these people think that Bai Xiao, the murderer, was a hero and a judge who eliminated evil. Mysterious, cold, ruthless, but with some warmth, these behaviors and temperaments integrate and represent the emergence of a new culture. And once the influence gradually expands, he will even become a symbol, engraved in the hearts of the American people. Although Bai Xiao was a little happy about the waves he caused, he did not forget himself. A person knows that he has many crazy fans, and there will always be some vanity. But the premise of everything Bai Xiao did was never to judge sin, but to become stronger, so his rationality never made him emotionally unbalanced. He was enjoying breakfast by himself. Before he had eaten for a few minutes, a beautiful figure came over, and a slightly hoarse and mature female voice sounded in his ears. Hey, can I sit here? The other seats are full. Bai Xiao, who was working hard, raised his head slightly and looked over. This was a very beautiful and mature woman with a burgundy ponytail, wearing a grey sweater, sweatpants and sneakers. The grey sweater was obviously wet because of the morning jogging exercise. Definitely, it's an honor. Thank you, my name is Jenny. The woman didn't seem surprised after getting the consent, and sat down after thanking him. John. Xiao. Bai Xiao tore a piece of whole wheat bread and said his name cheerfully and generously, but there was a meaningful flash in his eyes. The woman seemed to be very cheerful and lively, and she started a conversation with Bai Xiao while eating. Do you live nearby? Yes, I live not far away. You can see that you are very young and handsome. The two of them started chatting while eating, and the atmosphere was very harmonious, but Bai Xiao felt more and more that this woman was weird in his heart. He had read some books on psychology and language skills. The woman seemed to be very normal in her words, but she always pulled some details of him inadvertently. This is a very high-end communication skill, or an interrogation skill. Ordinary people don't notice these details at all, and the other party shows his character generously and cheerfully, thereby lowering his defense, which is not something that ordinary women can do. In addition, Bai Xiao accidentally glanced at the woman's palm, and there were some calluses on her fingers. He was not sure whether it was because of years of holding guns and training. However, Bai Xiao was sure that this woman was deliberately approaching him. Chapter 12. With the psychological defense in mind, Bai Xiao's attitude did not change at all. It was as if he was completely unaware of the woman's inadvertent clichés, so he was naturally tricked out of most of his information. The two had a pleasant chat. After breakfast, the woman didn't bother too much and didn't leave any messages in the conventional way. It was just like a normal chance encounter between strangers. Bai Xiao left the restaurant and walked all the way to his apartment. While walking, he paid attention to his surroundings and did not notice any trace of being monitored. Are you alone? Bai Xiao had some guesses in his heart. In the next period of time, just as Bai Xiao thought, he still ran in the morning, stayed at home and studied, and used his self-taught IT skills to earn US dollars for himself. Although not every time, the woman would occasionally run into him while eating breakfast. Over time, the two became familiar with each other, and the topics between them extended to many topics, including the most famous serial killer recently. Bai Xiao frankly showed his admiration for the killer. There are few young people today who do not worship such a righteous judge. As for this person named Jenny, she also revealed her own information. She is a psychological counselor, 26 years old, and recently moved to Queens. She lives in an apartment about 100 meters away from Bai Xiao's apartment, and she plans to have her own open a psychological counseling clinic. I usually like fitness exercises, playing tennis, and so on. It seemed normal, but Bai Xiao didn't believe it at all, and he noticed that this woman's physical fitness was much stronger than that of the average adult male. In other words, some organization was aware of his identity, perhaps just suspicious, so it approached and observed him. Police? Or the FBI? Agent? Bai Xiao thinks it may be the latter. This woman's temperament and conversation are absolute experts in psychology and language skills. Moreover, this woman can easily take off people's defenses, especially men. Together, she is more like a spy. S.H.I.E.L.D. This also reminded Bai Xiao of the Snake Shield Bureau. Sure enough, the more you do, the more you expose, but the massacre unfolding in Queens is too easy to narrow down. It was a very precise airborne landing, but Bai Xiao did not intend to go dormant completely. His patience was just a sign of weakness in the early stage. Now that his single combat ability has surpassed that of ordinary people, he needs to continue to advance, so he has set his sights on other groups. Vampires, or Blood Clan. Those who are not from my race must have different minds. Bai Xiao has always had an attitude towards these extraordinary life races, that is his nourishment. Especially the two races, vampires and werewolves, were simply his biggest sources of experience during his growth period. When a hunter sets his sights on his prey, he doesn't need any reason. The same is true when vampires set his sights on those young and beautiful girls. The same goes for when he sets his sights on vampires and werewolves. The next day, Bai Xiao did not stay at home as usual. Instead, he searched for gold stores to buy silver. Compared with gold, silver was not expensive at $4 per gram. He wanted to use silver to make weapons against vampires. Special extraordinary physique. A long sword over 1 meter weighs about 1 kilogram or 2 kilograms. In other words, the overall price of making a whole body of silver is about $4,000 to $8,000. However, this is not practical, mainly because of the material problem of silver. The hardness of the sword body will be a problem, and it is very fragile. In fact, vampire hunters, the main body of the silver weapon is still steel, and the outer coating can be silver. Because silver has a similar bactericidal effect and is specifically designed to kill vampires, it can only be said to be a blood killer. You don't need much silver. But Bai Xiao still bought about 2 kilograms of silver. Calculated, it was probably enough to make 4 or 5 silver swords and several daggers. There are already chain stores here in the United States that specialize in selling swords. Swords are considered collectibles and the price is not too low, especially if they are specially customized. He found a forging craft shop with a good reputation. The price of a cross sword is about $400. It's about $1,000. He specializes in customization, so the price is more expensive. 4 cross swords and 2 Gurkha standard machetes were customized, which are short sword types. The total cost was $4,000. The number of these weapons has already determined Bai Xiao's psychological threshold for vampires at the moment. He is not afraid of having enough numbers, but is afraid of killing too many and causing damage to the weapons. During these intervals between the forging of the cross sword and the Gurkha scimitar, Bai Xiao began preparations. During the past 2 days and nights, he began to stay in various areas of New York. He was silently observing in nightclubs, bars, high-end restaurants, hotels, etc. His super senses gave him an ability similar to intuition. Somewhat similar to Spider-Man's Peter. It's definitely more like a weakened version of Superman. His super hearing allows him to hear the flow of blood in the human body and the beating of the heart. His sight is not the same as Superman's, which can directly see things at the molecular level, but he can see through people's outer skin. Next, some details. Combined with hearing, it's like an X-laser scan. Coupled with his super sense of smell, combined, he can basically tell whether a person or a ghost is in front of him at a glance. Just as Bai Xiao thought, there are many vampires in New York. He even tracked some vampires and found several lairs. Based on rough calculation, the number is in the thousands, and bars and nightclubs have the most. There are also many business centers such as Manhattan. There are actually quite a few in the Queens district, but things in the Queens district have been too big recently, and the vampires seem to have noticed and hid, and Bai Xiao didn't bother to look for them. He plans to start in Brooklyn and gradually work his way up to Central City's Manhattan district. As for the woman named Jenny, since the other party wants to pretend, he will not point it out. The longer time passes, the threat from the human government will gradually decrease. Chapter 13. Early in the morning in Queens, in an empty apartment, with the sound of the key turning, a beautiful woman wearing a sports sweatshirt and sweatpants with a burgundy ponytail walked in. After closing the door, he went to the refrigerator, put the key on the refrigerator, opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of milk and drank it. After finishing the drink, he threw the plastic bottle into the trash can and walked to the sofa to sit down. Just then, the phone rang. The woman picked up the phone and answered the call. Phil Coulson, hearing the woman speak first, the other end immediately confirmed the situation and said, in the past 2 days, he went to a gold store in Queens to buy 2 kilograms of silver, and then went to a store called SG to customize 6 weapons. 4 ordinary cross swords and 2 Gurkha scimitars. The materials are relatively common, but the outer layer of the weapon needs to be coated with silver powder. What's on your mind, Natasha Romanoff? The woman's official alias was Natasha Romanoff. When she heard Phil Coulson's investigation, she frowned slightly. Silver weapon. Isn't this a weapon specially designed to restrain vampires? But where are there vampires in this world? Are they just used for collections? As a spy, Natasha Romanoff knows more about some unknown things in this world than ordinary people, but she has never heard of vampires. Then why did the target she was observing suddenly acquire these silver weapons? Is it just for fun? Or has the other party really discovered a vampire? Is it possible? Natasha Romanoff doesn't know. Besides these, what has he been doing lately? In the past few days, he has been wandering around various districts in New York, aimlessly. However, most of his goals at night are bars and nightclubs, but he is too young to enter. Phil Coulson answered accurately. Something strange. It's indeed strange. If he is the target you identified, then there should be a specific reason for his actions. Natasha Romanoff heard the deeper meaning in Phil Coulson's words. However, with several contacts, she became more and more certain that the rainy night butcher was the Asian boy named John Xiao. All his experiences, characteristics, and changes were in line with the profile and conditions of the rainy night butcher. An extremely sane, strong, and grown-up person would suddenly do these inexplicable things? It can't be because he killed too many people that he became insane and turned into a madman immersed in his own world, right? It was possible, but not very likely. At least Natasha Romanoff believed in her own judgment. After several contacts and conversations with the boy, she could feel a sense of confidence and reason in his eyes and temperament. Although the boy looks sunny and optimistic on the surface, this temperament cannot be concealed. For an Asian who has experienced blows and setbacks to live in a city like New York and be able to show such confidence speaks volumes. It's not that Natasha Romanoff has never seen a mad genius who is good at disguising, but no matter how he disguises himself, under any elegant conversation, confidence, pride, decadence, or various emotions, it is a heart-stopping madness, the kind that can swallow up all the madness. This boy is definitely not crazy. Then what the other party did is worth pondering. How do you feel about this short period of contact? Phil Coulson paused the topic and moved to another topic. Natasha Romanoff gave an answer that surprised Phil Coulson, but not surprisingly. Danger, extreme danger. Under his optimistic appearance, he hides an extremely restless heart, and he is like a sleeping beast. Once he wakes up, he will raise his claws to tear apart any prey standing in front of him. He was literally terrifying, Phil Coulson. Every second I spent with him I felt like my heart was pounding and I had the urge to run away from him. Natasha Romanoff sighed, her expression a little complicated. Just recalling it, she even still had that feeling of heart palpitations. The other person didn't speak for a long time, as if Natasha Romanoff was shocked by what she said. I've never seen you say that about anyone else, Natasha Romanoff. He is too dangerous and too keen. I feel that he is already doubting me. Natasha Romanoff had a headache. Such a mission target was so dangerous that she wanted to give up the mission. Years of experience in many battles have long since given her an eye for insight into people's minds, as well as an uncanny sixth sense. She always feels that the other person is the one who truly has the ability to see into people's hearts. So much so that she gave up even the idea of tracking the other person's movements, and just pretended to be the role of Private Dr. Jenny. The way to track Xiao was at her suggestion, and she just used surveillance cameras to track him. It would be too easy for the other party to detect him by using manpower to track him. Anyway, with the rainy night butcher's ability and meticulous thinking, if he really wanted to continue killing people, it would be difficult for them to track him. Unless they simply stop acting and dispatch agents on a large scale to target the opponent. It's just that Natasha Romanoff's own task is to observe and contact, not to fall out with the other party. Then what are you going to do next? Phil Coulson over there asked after pondering for a moment. Natasha Romanoff was silent for a while and then said, continue to observe and contact me. The other party probably has not confirmed my identity. They are just suspicious. Before the director issues an order, if I feel danger, I will evacuate. Good luck, Natasha Romanoff. After hanging up the phone, Natasha Romanoff put down her phone, stood up and walked to the window. She looked through the window at the third floor of an apartment building in front of her on the left, which was the apartment where Xiao lived. What happened to you? What are you looking for? Do you really just hate those gangsters? Natasha Romanoff's beautiful eyes flashed and she murmured silently in her heart. Chapter 14. Xiao doesn't know Natasha Romanoff's thoughts. But he was ready to start a new killing spree, and his target was a bar in Brooklyn. It's still night, and it won't rain tonight. In the apartment building, the only difference was that he put on new clothes, a black plaid shirt and jeans, with a black coat on top and a round hat on his head. He looked like a British gentleman. Wind. He held a rectangular box in his hand, which contained a cross-sword coated with silver powder, and a Gurkha scimitar hung on his waist. Walking out the door, he hailed a cab and headed to the bar in Brooklyn. It is worth mentioning that when he went out to get in the car, he glanced to the left without leaving any trace. On the fourth floor of the apartment building, although the windows were closed with curtains, he was as sharp as a falcon. His eyes caught sight of an eye looking at him out of the corner of his eye. He tried his best to observe himself without looking directly at him, but he was still detected by his super senses. Natasha Romanoff, Phil Coulson, really SHIELD. Sitting in the back seat of the taxi, Xiao's lips curved. During this period, the woman pretending to be Jenny behaved normally, but little did he know that Xiao had been using his super hearing to listen and pay attention to her. So much so that during the day she thought she had no surveillance and a safe environment to talk to Phil Coulson. In fact, everything stopped in his ears. Even if he was hundreds of meters away, he still couldn't escape his deliberate listening. These two familiar names made Xiao already know the identities of these two people. Black Widow, top agent of future Avengers member, Natasha Romanoff. Romanoff. Phil Coulson, future S.H.I.E.L.D. director. Sure enough, he was on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s list. Think about it, a huge organization like S.H.I.E.L.D. will pay close attention to any special people and things, so much so that if it thinks it can be absorbed, it will observe and contact them, and finally use means to recruit them. Although the S.H.I.E.L.D. force organization is huge, in fact, there is only one Hawkeye who can barely hold the top level of combat power. This top-level combat power does not include some mutant monsters, such as Magneto, Professor X, Phoenix, Cyclops, Storm, and the like. It just refers to the top combat power according to human standards. Compared with Iron Man, Thor, and Hulk, Hawkeye and Natasha Romanoff seem a bit like soy sauce, but being able to join this kind of superhero team, apart from a tacit agreement, both of them have their own roles. The combat power is at the bottom but far stronger than ordinary people. But there are only so many. Crossbones is one, but it's still a Hydra. Therefore, S.H.I.E.L.D. will always find ways to absorb people who have single-target combat capabilities. When Xiao is a master just by looking at his results and analysis, but he still maintains a certain bottom line, it is not surprising that S.H.I.E.L.D. would pay attention to him. Xiao must be the attention of some one-eyed black braised egg. If it were Hydra, it would have been suppressed and brainwashed. Xiao didn't care about S.H.I.E.L.D's style. He didn't bother to comment on Hey Lu Dan's style. He could only say that his vision was different. Hey Lu Dan knew many secrets, but they were limited to a small area. Xiao can be different, multi-universe, hell, heaven, Eternals, Asgard, group of gods, creation gods, etc. And Xiao is confident that he will grow up over time to be able to compete with those so-called gods, and even kill the gods. Organizations such as S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra are not on his list of experiences at all. At most, they are just spices in his daily life. To put it bluntly, he is a person with a bird's eye view. Putting these aside, the taxi drove to a bar called the Stonewall Inn in the 75th arrondissement of Brooklyn. The bar was full of the punk metal style of this era. The surrounding alleys were dirty and muddy, and there were lots of garbage. In front of the bar, there were a lot of people. Some scantily clad girls hugged their male companions. The wanton noise made the neighborhood unquiet. After Bai Xiao paid and got off the bus, he stood in front of the bar. His dress was completely inconsistent with the people who came to the bar here. The glances from all around conveyed various messages. Bai Xiao lowered the brim of his hat and ignored them. He glanced around with cold eyes, his senses were amplified, and the world seemed to suddenly become quiet. From his perspective, the crowd in front of him, transformed into illusory bodies, the beating of the heart, the sound of the pulse, and the flow of blood. All this information was received by his brain, and in an instant, he determined whether the group of people outside were humans or ghosts. There are many people, and there are also many ghosts. From inside the bar, there is a unique smell. Cold and foul smelling. This kind of bar has no rule against entering under the age of 22. The main purpose is to join if you want to join. After all, these vampires like fresh and delicious fairies and fresh meat the most. Young people are not allowed in, so how can they hunt? So Bai Xiao entered the bar very smoothly. It has to be said that the bar is very spacious, with retro red satin sofas, paintings on the wall, lights of various colors above the head and exciting music, so that people who enter can instantly enter the atmosphere of this heavy metal music. But Bai Xiao only felt noisy. He carried the long box with the cross sword in his hand, came to the bar, and ordered a cocktail. The bartender was a very beautiful blonde girl. She looked at Bai Xiao's dress and face, and a flash of blood flashed in her eyes while mixing the cocktail. While wanting to start teasing, Bai Xiao put his finger to his mouth and made a shushing gesture. The cold light in his eyes pierced the woman-like substance. The woman felt that her heart was pierced by this light, and the movements of her hands stopped due to fear and shock. Bai Xiao ignored the beautiful blonde woman with a twisted look in front of him. He slowly picked up the long box, placed it on the bar, opened it slowly, and revealed the cross sword lying inside. The cross sword is 1.4 meters tall and resembles a cross-shaped sword. The sharp blade is smooth because it is coated with silver powder. Overall it looks great. The people sitting at the surrounding bars also noticed something was wrong here. When they saw Bai Xiao picking up the cross sword, their expressions were full of doubts and curiosity. They didn't know what the freak in front of them was doing. Chapter 15. This is. The blonde bartender felt the tingling and discomfort of the sword in the man's hand, and she immediately realized what ingredients had been added to it. Her twisted expression was full of horror and despair. Bai Xiao picked up the cross sword and waved it in a cold arc in midair amid the strange expressions of the men and women drinking on both sides. This sword cut off the head of the blonde female bartender who dared not move due to fear without mercy. The next moment, heads flew around, blood splattered everywhere, followed by a body bursting with sparks, and clothes began to burn. I bought it killing. Run, you madman! The men and women drinking on both sides were frightened by Bai Xiao's sudden and crazy behavior. They screamed in terror and ran away. As New York's virtuous citizens, gunfights and other things should be common. But a gunfight is a gunfight, but I have never experienced such an outrageous thing like seeing a beautiful blonde female bartender have her head chopped off with a sword at such a close range. Especially after the beautiful blonde female bartender had her head cut off, her body and head burned automatically as if being ignited by sparks. The scene was too horrifying and broke their psychological defenses. Screams and commotion. This is just a small area, the powerful music allows more men and women to immerse themselves in their own world. Oblivious to what is happening here. Bai Xiao didn't care about those people who were running away, because after he killed the blonde female bartender, a more bloody light ball hit his heart. Every cell, bone, and internal organ in the body is cheering for joy. Thinking is clearer and the senses are sharper. The experience of a small character vampire is more than 10 times that of an adult man. This multiple makes Bai Xiao's eyes bristle. Experience, a lot of experience, is beckoning to him. He glanced around happily, and there were already a dozen vampires with fierce expressions surrounding him. Especially holding various weapons, swords, pistols, rifles, etc. in his hands. There was a handsome white vampire who pointed a pistol at Bai Xiao and was about to speak, but his eyes were blurred when the figure that was about 10 meters away suddenly burst into view. He was horrified and subconsciously wanted to pull the trigger. But the next second, a dazzling silver flash across the beautiful arc. Then his consciousness suddenly disappeared, his head was cut off, and his whole body burned with sparks and turned into ashes. In the sky full of ashes and sparks, Bai Xiao was like a ferocious cheetah with a ghostly figure, killing one vampire and rushing towards the next without stopping. As an extraordinary creature, its reflexes, speed, and strength far exceed those of ordinary people. The moment Bai Xiao killed the first vampire, the other vampires immediately reacted and pulled the triggers. Bullets were fired in the direction of Bai Xiao. However, Bai Xiao reacted too fast and fought. Awareness is also very high. After killing the first one, he turned to the second one, just in time to avoid the storm of bullets. He rushed to the second tall black vampire, grabbed the opponent's firing rifle with his left hand and lifted it up, stabbed the opponent's heart with a sword in his right hand, then drew it out and continued to rush towards the third one without looking. His movement trajectory was extremely weird, and his speed made these vampires feel terrified. At the same time, his body was still swaying to avoid the muzzles of each gun, and he also used the angle difference to block the vampires in front of him, with a gap in all directions. Next, the silver cross sword in Bai Xiao's hand matched his footsteps, as if dancing a beautiful waltz. The bombardment of explosive music, the sky full of ashes and sparks, and the silver arcs cutting through the various lights seemed like ripples swallowing the lives of these vampires. The battle may seem intense, but in fact the entire process from start to finish lasts only a few dozen seconds. But it was these 10 seconds of continuous shooting that completely woke up the men and women who were immersed in the explosive music. These people stopped twisting and swaying in confusion. Some of them saw the scene of Bai Xiao using the cross sword to cut off the head of the last vampire. The horrifying scene of the flying head and the headless corpse burning with sparks. This group of people only then did he realize what he was doing, and he screamed in terror and ran away from the outside of the bar. The rest of the people who were not aware of the situation were unknowingly infected by panic and joined the fleeing team one after another. Soon, the bar was partially emptied, and the remaining men and women were still staying. However, everyone looked at Bai Xiao with a fierce look on their face. It was obvious that these people were vampires. The music was stopped, but the lights were still shining in various colors. The lights illuminated everyone erratically, and different looks flashed past, but the blood-colored pupils and sharp teeth made people only feel fear when they looked at them. The breath became oppressive and heavy. Bai Xiao glanced at the entire venue, and all information including the entire scene, the placement of tables and chairs, distances, etc. were transmitted to his brain to construct a temporary virtual scene. His brain was running at high speed to analyze and obtain the most correct information. The silver cross sword in his hand moved slightly. The moment the suffocating breath reached its highest point, Bai Xiao shuddered, and the terrifying explosive power was revealed at this moment. The floor suddenly cracked, and the explosive breath surged from his body, and his whole body turned into a sharp sword and rushed towards the crowd of vampires. With roars, the vampires also showed their most ferocious side. Ghostly figures rushed towards the lowly human who dared to kill their noble blood clan. Bai Xiao was fearless and rushed into the crowd of hundreds of vampires with the utmost indifference and rationality. Everything in front of him seemed to slow down. From all directions, hands with sharp nails rushed toward them. His figure was full of strange things, but he looked at him indifferently. Twisting his body, the sharp sword in his hand drew an arc of light in mid-air. Spinning in a circle like lightning, the hands and vampires reaching out from all directions were cut into 2 pieces in an instant. Hunting officially begins. Chapter 16. Are vampires strong? Definitely strong. Although vampires are divided into different levels because of their pure blood, even low-level vampires have genes that humans cannot touch. It can be said that the lowest vampire can hit a punch heavier than Tyson at his peak. Speed is even more of an advantage for vampires. It is difficult for ordinary bullets to destroy vampires on a physical level. This basically establishes the horror of vampires, especially their contagiousness. However, compared to ordinary people, vampires are powerful, but Bai Xiao is even more powerful than these vampires. The level of life was completely crushed. What's more, he also had a cross sword in his hand specially added with silver powder to restrain vampires, so the scene inside the bar had only one result: massacre. Bai Xiao's speed and strength are too much for these low-level vampires. The silver cross sword kept drawing silver arcs to harvest their lives. The ferocity and cruelty were shattered by the even more ruthless Bai Xiao at this moment. In less than a minute, hundreds of vampires were killed. There are only about 20 left. The vampires started from being violent and wanted to tear Bai Xiao to pieces, but then discovered that the other party was unparalleledly powerful. Each of their compatriots had their heads chopped off, or their hearts were pierced, and they spontaneously ignited and turned into ashes. Despair and fear filled their hearts and minds. "Run, he's a monster!" Finally, someone couldn't help but yelled in fear and turned around to escape. However, just as he turned around, his eyes blurred, and a figure like the death god was right in front of him, grabbing hold of him with one hand. He grabbed the vampire's head and lifted it up. His heart was pierced by the cross sword. Xiao turned around and looked at the 20 or so vampires behind him who dared not move. He raised his hand slightly and threw the struggling and screaming vampires with sparks in their hands to the ground. Plop! The vampire lay on the ground in pain, reaching out to his remaining compatriots, as if praying, begging them to save him. But the only response he got was a pair of frightened and desperate eyes, and a movement of taking a step back. Finally, with everyone watching, the vampire turned into ashes. "Who are you? Are you Daywalker?" "No, that's not right. You are not a Daywalker. A Daywalker is also a blood clan. You don't have the breath of the blood clan. You are just a human. Are you a mutant? Let us go, we can give you everything you want, we can become your most loyal slaves." The terrifying scene completely made the vampires give up their resistance. They knew that no matter how hard they struggled, they could not escape the clutches of the man in front of them. This man was not a human at all, he was just a butcher. Regardless of gender, regardless of ugliness, he only wanted to kill. Butcher. All of them were lying humbly on the ground, crying and muttering, begging for mercy, hoping to use their only value to pray for Xiao to have a kind heart. Xiao's expression was already indifferent, staring at these vampires, and walked forward step by step. His footsteps made these vampires dare not even cry. They could only put their heads on the ground and wait for their fate. The sound of footsteps was like a bell ringing in their hearts. Every step made their hearts beat involuntarily. Finally, Xiao walked up to them, looked down at the trembling vampires, raised his cross sword, and killed the prey in cold blood. Before death comes, these guys don't even dare to resist. It is conceivable that when they become extremely desperate, they will either go crazy or wait for death. They are undoubtedly the latter. Hundreds of vampires were slaughtered, and the rich life essence crashed into his body. The feeling was stronger and clearer than every previous experience. Not to mention the comprehensive strengthening of physical fitness, the magic power in the body surged tenfold. It was just a stream before, but now it must be at least a river. The energy in his body was about to burst out. He could feel that once he released this energy, the bar and half of the street would explode. As expected, these blood clan, extraordinary races such as werewolves, bring far more life essence than ordinary humans. Xiao held up his round hat, walked to the bar with the cross sword in his hand, and put it away. As for the cocktail on the table, he didn't move it. Not to mention whether there were other ingredients in it, it just smelled of alcohol. He doesn't like it. After taking the box, he went to the control room on the second floor of the bar, took away the surveillance cassette, turned off the power of the bar, causing darkness inside and outside the bar, and then Shiran left. The massacre in the bar caused all the original guests in the bar to flee, but naturally there were bold people wandering around to see what was going on. But the lights inside and outside the bar went dark because the power was turned off. There were only a few street lamps on the street that brought some light. However, as soon as Xiao came out, he flicked hard, and a few pieces of gravel shot out like bullets, accurately hitting the bulbs of the street lamps, making several bang bangs. There was a sound, the light bulb shattered, and the surroundings fell into darkness. It also made the people around him scream in fear. In the chaos, Xiao walked slowly into the dark alley across the street and left. Everything returned to calm. After a few minutes, and everything in the bar was silent, some people who were knocked out bravely walked into the bar. Everything was dim, and the dead silence was like darkness that could swallow up the will. In the end, no matter how courageous he couldn't resist the fear, so he staggered away. Until the sound of police sirens broke the dead silence. When the NYPD officers walked into the bar wearing body armor, armed with explosion-proof shields and pistols, and turned the power back on, they were shocked when they saw the messy scene inside the bar because it was so weird. "What the hell is going on here?" one of the police officers murmured in disbelief. Chapter 17. There were guns, weapons, messy tables and chairs all over the floor, bullet craters and cracked floors. It was like experiencing a big melee, but there was not a single body on the ground. According to the caller's call, there was a gunfight here, and a madman was massacring people. Where were the corpses? They rushed all the way from the police station to here. Because the nature was too bad, the police dispatch speed was much more efficient than before. It took about half an hour in total, but in half an hour, people could really transport the body away. And what about the blood? Where's the head? The entire bar was empty. Although there was no bloody scene, the police officers at the scene still felt weird and horrified. John, go to the control room and check the surveillance. Lena, go outside and question all the people who were in the bar at that time. In addition, I want to know if they saw anyone coming in or out of the bar in the past half hour. The police officers were busy performing their duties according to the order, but the final result was obviously nothing. The surveillance videotape was taken away artificially, and the people outside did not notice anyone coming or going for half an hour. The only possible clue was that a few men and women seemed to have seen the murderer at the bar. But the description is very vague and fantasy. Because what they saw was a female bartender whose head was beheaded, her head flying around, and her body starting to burn with sparks. In the sky full of sparks, the murderer was holding a cross sword, and the bar was slightly dark at that time. In the dark environment, and because they were afraid, their first reaction was to run away. Therefore, the murderer's appearance was not seen at all. These clues confused the investigating police officers. What is this? Are all these people crazy? Or is the murderer a mutant? Have a special ability? While the police officers at the Stonewall Bar in Brooklyn were still troubled by the strange scene, Xiao had already evacuated according to the originally planned route. In 2000, the popularity of surveillance cameras in New York was not that great. At least for Xiao, it is easy to find one or more unmonitored routes. However, there were inexplicably more surveillances in Queens near his home. As for who did it, he knew it, but Xiao naturally had his own method. He didn't take the usual route at all and returned directly from the building floor. Home. At the moment, his body strength structure has been strengthened so many times, especially after killing hundreds of vampires tonight, his jumping ability, explosive power and coordination are already at an inhuman level. It's easy to jump over 100 meters. In terms of physical strength alone, the future Spider-Man is just a younger brother to him. So an unusual parkour from the top of the building complex was obviously not a problem for Xiao. S.H.I.E.L.D. never imagined that he would get home this way. Very easily, he returned to his home. With a quick glance, his strong memory and eyesight allowed him to quickly know that no one had been to his home. Thinking about it, with the level of caution of a top spy like Natasha Romanoff, it would be impossible to break into his home directly. That would be the same. You directly flipped the table. Maintaining distance and tacit understanding is the other party's current strategy. As for Xiao, his fear of S.H.I.E.L.D. and even the human government has become lower and lower now. He keeps a distance and treats it as if it never happened. He just wants to gain experience, but if the other party doesn't know good and bad, then don't blame him for killing Shield. His attitude and direction always change with his strength. When you are weak, you lie dormant, when you are strong, you are fearless. Focus on flexibility. The saying that a strong person should not be blasphemed is clearly demonstrated in this universe. Even though Thor was a reckless man without any brains in the early stage, in fact, many of his actions were held by a strong person. I am stronger than you, and I can tolerate you. You mean that you can be arrogant? If you dare to cross the bottom line and be arrogant, the only outcome will be to have your head cut off. I gained a lot tonight. Xiao followed the same rules and cooked himself a delicious meal. After eating, he washed up and went to bed. As for the subsequent turmoil, it has nothing to do with him. Because the next day, he made his second plan. He found a deserted and abandoned car park in the western suburbs of New York. It's said to be a car park, but actually there is nothing here, just a large car park building with nothing inside. There is no human habitation for about a kilometer around. It belongs to an undeveloped area in New York. He found this place for the magic power surging in his body. The birth of magic gave him more possibilities. He needed to develop the use of magic. His physical fitness was already extremely strong, and he did not want to let himself go down a single path. He needs to think and develop his magic power to make himself stronger. This is the perfect place for him. During the day, Xiao took the first step. He had already made plans on how to use magic power and create his own moves through magic power. Magic is a kind of energy. Since it is energy, it has a core. Through this energy core, it must be released in a specific way to produce the effects it wants to destroy. The first step is to control the magic power and use the magic power accurately. No matter what it is, achieving the most precise control is the most basic step. He gradually began to experiment, and he began to let the magic power surge through his body, to all parts of his body, including bones, internal organs, muscles, and even cells. While flowing, he was also feeling the subtle changes. The essence of life is comprehensive strengthening, which causes his mental power to grow with the growth of his physical quality. To a certain extent, his mental power is much stronger than some magicians who study magic and meditate every day. If this continues, he believes that it will only be a matter of time before he surpasses Professor X purely in terms of mental ability. It is easy for Bai Xiao to perceive the subtle changes inside his body. It is precisely because of this that he discovered that when his magic power covered and filled the internal organs, bones, and muscle fibers, he could clearly feel that they would be greatly strengthened during this period of time. This made him have a guess. For this conjecture, he specially concentrated his magic power and covered his fist with the flow of magic power. Then he came to the wide open space outside the parking lot and smashed it against the ground. Boom. 0. Chapter 18. Huge amounts of roaring explosions shook the surrounding area. The ground seemed to be hit by a meteorite. With the fist as the center, terrible cracks spread in all directions like a spider web. Bai Xiao was wearing a coat and kept swinging with a hunting sound. The ground sunk within a distance of 100 meters in diameter, and the air wave was like the torrent swept away gravel and dust. Even the old building in the repair shop not far away could not bear it and collapsed, turning into ruins. The movement lasted for about 10 seconds. The smoke dispersed and everything became calm. Bai Xiao bent over and pulled up the fist that had been driven into the ground. After standing up straight, he glanced at the half-meter-high depression pit, eyes full of surprise. He could imagine how much magic would increase his power, but he didn't expect it to be so big. If he had just punched this punch with all his physical strength, he knew it would have such an effect. However, the punch he just punched did not use much force, at most it was only 1/3 of the total force. Only 1/3, combined with the increase in magic power, can achieve this effect, which has exceeded his estimate. What if all the magic power is released and is used with all the strength? So what? Bai Xiao stood there, a word flashed in his mind: destroy the city. Really face the destruction of the city in the true sense. What nuke Superman? Now his is. One punch and one nuclear bomb. In addition, he also tested his speed. Without using magic power, his initial calculated speed can reach 100 meters per second. After using magic power to increase his legs, he can easily break through to 150 meters or even 200 meters. Rise. In addition, he captured 2 rats, broke their bones, cut off their forelimbs, and released magic power to infuse the rats' bodies. Under his precise control of magic power, it covers and even stimulates bone regeneration and cell regeneration, allowing the 2 mice to self-heal. The former has intact bones, while the latter directly regenerates limbs. This effect surprised Bai Xiao even more. This magical attribute is a bit of a panacea. Can amplify, can unleash destruction, can give others self-healing. Could it be Chakra? Bai Xiao immediately thought of one person, and that was Tsunade. Although it is just a virtual character, the idea is the same: strange power, yin seal, the art of hundreds of heroes, creation and regeneration. The strange power is very simple. As long as he continues to strengthen his control over magic power, the amplification effect on the physical body will only get better and better. It is worth mentioning that he can perceive that his magic power is stored in cells, which is somewhat similar to Superman's absorption. Solar energy and radiation are stored in cells. However, people can grow by absorbing it every day, and the magic power in his cells will also grow automatically, but very slowly. Moreover, all the energy in the cells is released in an instant, and the recovery speed is not slow, but not fast, but this is a flaw for Bai Xiao. In high-intensity battles, the inability to continue fighting at high intensity is a flaw. Then he has to find a way to solve this flaw. The yin seal is a good reference. He can create a similar yin seal and store the energy in his cells every day. Once it is used up in battle, he can release the yin seal's energy to continue fighting. The length of the battle depends entirely on the upper limit of the yin seal. Moreover, when he faces an enemy more powerful than himself, he can also release all the yin seals to achieve the max amplification effect, which can increase his strength several times or even dozens of times in a short period of time. Therefore, the prerequisite for all solutions is the key core of the yin seal. Tsunade's yin seal was created based on the sealing technique. There was no such thing as a sealing technique in Bai Xiao's head, and there were no prerequisites. He couldn't create it even if he wanted to. So Bai Xiao thought of another place. Camartage, when you are in doubt, magic solves it. There are a large number of magic books and knowledge in Camartage. The magic knowledge of Camartage is to borrow the magic energy of the magic dimension through spells and magic mark communication to complete the use of magic. But the disadvantage is that there is a price. After all, you have to pay back what you borrow. If you borrow someone else's strength, you have to give back double or even multiple times. Bai Xiao doesn't need this flawed method. He already has energy. What he needs is magic knowledge. By learning and mastering this magic knowledge, he can create his own magic system and matching moves. So far, this is the only way Bai Xiao can think of. In addition to the yin seal, he also has more ideas in max mode, and he also needs to rely on magic knowledge to complete them. Bai Xiao stood there, frowning and thinking. It is certain that he cannot beat the Ancient One. The Ancient One was originally a strong man among the Heavenly Father. Over the years, he has expelled countless powerful enemies from other dimensions and even monsters like the Hell Lord Mephisto. The Ancient One was beaten until he was forced to sign a contract. Let them not dare to blatantly come to the earth to wreak havoc. Although there may also be forces from heaven, but at least it can illustrate the power of Ancient One. He couldn't afford to offend this kind of monster at the moment. He doesn't want to rely on others to control his destiny, but sooner or later he will have to face the Ancient One in the future. The question is, should he meet in advance or postpone it? Bai Xiao's rational thinking allowed him to get the answer quickly. That's a delay. He still has time to grow. The Ancient One's delay in showing up has basically acquiesced to his existence. He should be more observing. Since he is observing, he has to show more of himself. Sighed. To put it bluntly, it is the same as what I thought before, showing the path I have always been on, which is to protect the earth. Yes, all of his seemingly killing behaviors can actually be related to protecting the earth. After all, he kills people who are full of sin. After that, he will hunt vampires, werewolves, and in the future he will kill demons, etc. In the eyes of Ancient One, wouldn't Bai Xiao be a person who punishes evil? It may not be possible to promote good, but Ancient One doesn't care whether you promote good or not, as long as Bai Xiao has a heart to kill everyone who covets the earth. The Ancient One's attitude will most likely push Bai Xiao into the Earth Camp. Isn't the Earth Camp a friendly party? This is definitely based on the premise that the Ancient One discovered the source of the timeline change at the beginning, but did not erase Bai Xiao. Now after so long, this condition has been established. Chapter 19. If Ancient One wants to observe, then Bai Xiao can wait. After thinking about this, Bai Xiao sighed inwardly. His character was still too rational and cautious. Otherwise, he could have found a way to contact the Ancient One in advance. This is a risky behavior, and the consequences of failure may lead to accidents, but once he succeeds, he will gain greater rewards, gain magical knowledge, and make his future path smoother. But it's better to be cautious. There are more possibilities to regain a new life. How can he not cherish everything? With time on his side, and with the existence of Goldfinger, his future will definitely not be bumpy. Magical knowledge is also a huge amount of cake, it just makes his road smoother. Clear thinking allowed Bai Xiao to abandon Ancient One and Camartage and continue to experiment and develop magic. The max mode was far away and he could completely develop another path. Energy compression. He tried to release magic power in his palm, turning it into a ball of light, and then continued to compress it until it reached the limit. He suddenly frowned because he felt that when it was compressed to a certain point, his palm was actually being compressed due to the high-intensity compression energy. Scorch marks. So he decisively dissipated the magic power, and the magic power covered his palm, stimulating the cells to quickly start healing. This guess didn't work, so he tried another one. That is to say, the energy is concentrated on the fingers, compressed to the point where the fingers can bear it, and then shot out in the form of a laser. In an instant, a terrifying golden energy beam shot towards the finger and towards the open space about 200 meters away. Boom! A violent explosion came, and the golden light covered the front. The majestic explosion energy swept everything around. The earth shook at this moment, and the rolled-up air waves swallowed up the surroundings. All obstacles were covered by this surging and violent air wave. The bottom was destroyed and turned into powder. Bai Xiao stood on the same spot, his steps and body motionless under the wave of air, and the hem of his coat swayed loudly. He squinted his eyes slightly, and waited until the terrible movement gradually subsided, then he slowly walked a few steps forward, and saw a huge amount of depression appeared in front of him, with a diameter of hundreds of meters, and a large depression on the ground. The soil has some crystallization due to the high temperature generated by the terrible explosion. Some of it turned into magma and burst into bubbles. The power is more than 3 times that of the original laser beam. The same magic power output has such an effect. Sure enough, my guess is correct. But the problem is that my body's strength structure is not enough to bear the greater compressed magic power output. I need a medium. Bai Xiao stood on the edge of the pit and immediately realized what he was missing. Weapon. He needs a weapon that can withstand the compression of his magic power and then release it. It can be a sword or a gun, but materials that can bear magic power are hard to find. Adamantium is known to be very dense, and the weapons used to make it are indestructible, but its hardness and durability are really not as good as those of other materials. Kind of metal, vibranium. Vibranium is produced in Wakanda. Different types of vibranium can absorb sound waves and other vibrations, and even kinetic energy. After absorbing these energy, it will make the metal more durable and stronger. This thing cannot have infinite energy absorbing. A strong enough force can break vibranium. However, this is the most durable and sturdy metal known on Earth, and it is also capable of growth. Bai Xiao believes that a weapon made of this metal material should be able to bear part of his compressed energy. Unfortunately, it is a problem that this thing can keep up with his own growth rate. But fortunately, there is also a lot of Uru metal in Asgard. The father of God Odin's eternal spear Gungnir, destroyer armor, stormbreaker and other artifact materials are Uru metal. Bai Xiao has ideas when it comes to picking up wool. Not only the Uru metal, but also the craftsmanship knowledge of the dwarf family and the rune characters of Asgard are all good things. The background of Asgard can only be described as terrifying. Treasure sanctuary. But if you want to harvest the wool, you have to wait until later. He had to solve the current problem. Maybe I should go to Wakanda? Before that, maybe find Stryker first. I remember that there should be adamantium in his base. If not, I can only find adamantium, but this thing should be in the hands of the military. There should be many mutant kids in Stryker's base. For a pervert like Stryker, Bai Xiao's attitude has always been to kill him on sight and to exterminate mutant. It seems that mutant has experienced it and hates mutants, but in fact, this guy just wants more power. Not only does he want to control mutants to serve him, but he also wants to create his own army of mutants, capture mutants in large numbers, and send them all to the test bed, regardless of age or S*X, to be dissected in the most brutal way. Over the years, countless mutants have died because of this executioner. Bai Xiao does not reject the mutant group. Ordinary people will hate mutants. It is more because of the propaganda of the mainstream media. They are afraid that these mutants will really be like Magneto said. Mutants are the evolution of human beings. Mutants only then should we lead the progress of mankind. The words were very radical, and they also aroused the vigilance and rejection of those powerful people and plutocrats. After all, these high-ranking officials hold high positions. Isn't Magneto's propaganda intended to rob them of their rights and status? They also yearn for powerful power. Who doesn't want to be able to manipulate metal like Magneto? Who doesn't want to have psychic powers like Professor X? It's just that they can't get it. Otherwise, it would be impossible for people like Stryker to arrest mutants and conduct human experiments without incident. To say that no one in the military and government was aware of it, Bai Xiao didn't believe it at all. There must be people who were unaware, but most of them must be tacitly agreeing. After all, there is not only one person like Stryker, there must be such experimental institutions all over the world. They are afraid of mutant, but Bai Xiao is not afraid. After all, he is originally one of the ceilings of Earth's combat power. Does he need to fear and reject mutant? Regardless of whether it is a person or a mutant, they are all the same in his eyes. If someone is guilty, he is guilty. If he encounters someone, he will kill them all. It didn't matter that people like Stryker didn't think about it. When he thought about it, Bai Xiao had already made up his mind to kill him. Chapter 20. While achieving his goal, he can kill a piece of trash and save some innocent children. For Bai Xiao, this is all benefit and no harm. It focuses on a kind-hearted child. After making up his mind, Bai Xiao continued to experiment with the magic power development process, but basically he was sculpting his control over magic power. Fortunately, he is not a mutated strengthener. The sudden increase in power will cause emotional imbalance and cannot control the sudden power. His strengthening is all-round, including physical fitness, magic power, and thinking, which is comprehensive. The skyrocketing power seems to be controlled by nature, but it is limited to this. It can be used, and it is used well. It can play some tricks, but it cannot achieve more precise and subtle control. At this time, Bai Xiao needs to carve it out himself. He tried various methods and finally confirmed the construction of a set of magic circuits inside the body. These circuits run through the whole body and are connected through blood vessels and meridians. This can accelerate the growth of magic power while maintaining body activity and allowing body cells to, the internal organs are strengthening all the time. In addition, he can do two things at once, by manipulating magic power and releasing it in his palms to complete various shape-shifting, such as lions, tigers, dragons, etc. Its hair and texture are fully sculpted and displayed. Or use magic power to perform some micromanipulation of cells to promote cell metabolism, protein synthesis, DNA replication, cell division, and maintain the health of the nervous system. In general, manipulate magic to do the most delicate work. Anyway, no matter how he does it, it will be huge amounts of good for his body. As the saying goes, eat one bite at a time and walk the road step by step. But he was different. He could eat big and stride without overstuffing or falling down. Very reasonable. Bai Xiao took a look around. Well, there were two pits with a diameter of 100 meters, collapsed ruins, and those who didn't know thought that this place was bombed by the military with missiles. The noise he made was still a bit loud, although in the suburbs, there will only be people living 1 kilometer apart, but the huge amounts of explosions will still attract attention. It seems that if you want to experimentally develop ability, you have to find a no-man's land. The journey home went smoothly without any serious accidents. When he got home, he leaned on the sofa and glanced around the house. He already had the idea of moving. He has no obsession with this home, even though he has lived there for many years. He knew that his savings were not too large now. Spending on food, clothing, and equipment had cost a lot of US dollars in the past few months, and he only had about 35,000 US dollars in savings. Most of them are old banknotes, which he had specially made before. Gangsters like to use old banknotes in transactions. If the transaction share is too large, money needs to be laundered. Bai Xiao did not take the money because he was cautious. After all, he had to hide himself at the beginning, and his need for money was not that big. Now he wants a new house, a temporary place to live. After all, to go to other areas to kill people, you still need to return to Queens. The distance is too far and it is a bit troublesome. There is no need for a luxurious house. It is best to have one in every district. In addition, a car must be put on the agenda. Buying a car. In fact, he does not have a driver's license yet. It will take about 2 months to get a driver's license in New York. Not to mention, it will take another person to accompany you for 1 year before you can obtain a driver's license. Quite cumbersome and troublesome. However, Bai Xiao already had a solution to this problem, which was to obtain a false certificate. In addition, he could use computer technology to hack into the Transportation Bureau's database and tamper with it. Also prepare a motorcycle. After writing this down, Bai Xiao put on a white sweater, a black jacket and jeans and went out again. It was already night, and he was too lazy to cook today, so he simply went out to eat. Although the place where he lived was crowded and a little messy, there were benefits. There are many residents nearby, and there are also many restaurants, fast food restaurants, and supermarkets. So I quickly found a restaurant and went in, found a seat in front of the window and ordered some food. While I was waiting, a familiar figure walked in at the door. After scanning around, the woman's eyes lit up and she walked straight to Bai Xiao. "Hey, Xiao, can I sit here?" Bai Xiao felt funny when he saw the woman in front of him, but he still agreed, "I have never seen you so polite before, Jenny, please sit down. It's been a long time since I last saw you these past few days. I've been very busy recently due to the busy work at the clinic, and I don't have time to cook by myself, so I came here. I didn't expect to meet you here." In front of him was S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Natasha Romanoff, whose pseudonym is Jenny. She seemed to be complaining, but in fact it was just to explain a legitimate reason. Bai Xiao definitely understood the meaning and did not expose it. He watched Jenny order a lot of food, obviously ordering more for the sake of authenticity. After ordering, Jenny chatted with Bai Xiao. I haven't seen you in the past few days. You rarely go for morning jogs lately. I've been reading at home and haven't gone out much lately, so you know. I understand very well, you have been running around a lot these past 2 days. Natasha Romanoff looked like she understood, but in fact she was secretly complaining. There was news from Phil Coulson that a strange case had occurred at a place called the Stonewall Bar in Brooklyn. It was said that someone was carrying out a massacre there, and many extremely weird details were shown. According to eyewitness testimony, the female bartender whose head was beheaded was reduced to ashes, and the sounds of fighting and roaring indicated that there was a battle going on inside. As a result, there was not a single body after the incident. A lot of guns, ammunition, bullet holes, and some ashes were left at the scene. After testing, there was no NDA information. Just a few scattered blood samples. Coupled with Bai Xiao's departure from Lenovo at that time, the subsequent investigation of the taxi driver's testimony, and the subsequent removal of surveillance tapes, she and Phil Coulson both concluded that the Stonewall Bar incident must be the work of the cheerful and handsome boy in front of them. It's just that there are too many strange and confusing aspects. Natasha Romanoff could only bite the bullet and take risks to encounter Bai Xiao. To be honest, Natasha Romanoff's curiosity was piqued. Chapter 21. When Natasha Romanoff first came into contact with Bai Xiao, she was a little scared, especially when she felt the terrifying aura from him. It seemed as if the wildness could awaken and tear her apart at any time. This is instinctive. However, after several contacts, and considering the massacre of Bai Xiao, Natasha Romanoff's sense of Bai Xiao changed slightly. No matter how many people this person killed, how rational and genius he was still a 17-year-old boy. From his profile, Natasha Romanoff believed that this boy was because of a series of experiences and the breakdown of his family. After the death of his parents, being bullied, and living in a harsh environment, he chose to break out and awaken a special ability, but he did not want to take revenge on the society, and his mind was not completely distorted. He hated gangsters, massacred gangsters, and gangsters, but when faced with those innocent people, he gave up killing, which means that this boy still has a kind heart in his heart. For such a boy with a clear distinction between love and hate, Natasha Romanoff's fear of him gradually decreased. She knew that she was not on the others' hunting list. She has no ill intentions towards this boy, and he will naturally not have murderous intentions towards her. After thinking about this, Natasha Romanoff felt pity and sympathy for her. Empathy is the most common emotion among women, or it can be said that this is common among human beings. Regardless of these, Natasha Romanoff also became very curious about what happened at the Stonewall Bar. Bai Xiao started some actions, buying silver, making weapons coated with silver powder, going to the Stonewall Bar, adding the scenes described by witnesses, and the strange scene when the police seized the scene. It's hard not to think of a creature. That's what Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson had guessed before. Vampire. All of this confirms that vampires, creatures that Natasha Romanoff once thought did not exist, do exist. If vampires exist, do the opposite werewolves exist? Do the ancestors of vampires and werewolves exist? This made the originally normal world suddenly turn into a fantasy? This change was something Natasha Romanoff had never imagined. But what makes Natasha Romanoff a little scared is that if vampires really exist, if she encounters such extraordinary creatures on countless missions before, how can she still survive? Now the Stonewall Bar case has been taken over by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the investigation is being launched in secret. Natasha Romanoff developed a strong curiosity about Bai Xiao. How did this handsome and cheerful boy discover vampires? Is it because I accidentally encountered it while exploring New York? So you immediately equipped yourself with weapons that can kill vampires? If this is really the case, then this big boy may not only be a butcher, he also has a kind heart and a protective heart. The more carefully you analyze his profile, because of his tragic experience, you will be treated badly. A wicked person has no mercy, only coldness and ruthlessness. But when he discovered the vampire species, he went all the way to Brooklyn and broke into the Stonewall Bar to kill the vampires. For such a person, Natasha Romanoff's remaining fear dissipated, and she changed from a cold-blooded butcher to a more real person. Bai Xiao did not expect Natasha Romanoff's change in thinking, but since his spirit continued to strengthen, he developed super senses and intuition, allowing him to easily identify the emotions of the people in front of him. It was kindness, and kindness without malice. Pity? What is this woman thinking? Bai Xiao glanced at the woman inexplicably. The female spy's thinking changed too quickly. Even the emotions of defense, vigilance, and fear were gone. After this period of relationship contact, this woman not only lost her guard, but also made up something in her mind? On the surface, Bai Xiao's expression did not change. He continued to chat with Natasha Romanoff about some seemingly common topics. In fact, it was Natasha Romanoff who was always cooperating. This is the art of spy language conversation. He will follow your topics, thoughts, and interests. Come and talk to gain the most favor. Bai Xiao didn't say anything else, he just talked about some recent self-study knowledge, such as computers, physics, chemistry, and so on. These knowledge contents are not difficult for top spies like Natasha Romanoff. She may not be very rich in knowledge, but at least she can talk about anything. When she talks about something that can arouse boys' complacency, she also shows an appropriate expression of "you are so awesome." A sense of adoration. As long as a man is faced with the adoring eyes and expressions of a beautiful woman, his vanity will immediately rise. Bai Xiao is definitely the same, but he is an honest person. Anyway, I know your depth and you know my strengths and weaknesses. If you want to see vanity, then he will also show appropriate pride. Both of them were acting, and both of them knew that the other had seen through them. Their hypocritical conversations and performances made the time when Bai Xiao was bored and waiting for food a little more interesting. By the way, Xiao, I'm going to take 2 days off because I've been busy lately. Since I just moved into Queens, can you take me for a walk in Queens? I heard that Chinatown here is very interesting, and I'm also very interested in Eastern culture. The food arrived, and after eating for a while, Natasha Romanoff raised her head and suddenly invited Bai Xiao tomorrow. Bai Xiao was cutting the steak but didn't refuse. Tomorrow. I have no problem. I haven't visited Chinatown for a long time. Bai Xiao thought for a while and agreed to Natasha Romanoff's invitation. Natasha Romanoff showed happiness. Wow, thank you, Xiao, you are so curious about some of the Oriental characteristics I mentioned before, especially the food. There are indeed many beautiful places in the East. Xiao answered in the affirmative. Then I'm looking forward to it even more. The two of them ate the meal for a full hour, plus chatting about desserts and coffee after the meal. After confirming the time at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, the two of them separated and went home. Bai Xiao went home without looking back. There was no such thing as the gentlemanly act of sending Natasha Romanoff home. After all, the other party was just 2 steps away, and they knew each other was acting, and acted like gentlemen. Chapter 22. Early in the morning, Natasha Romanoff was wearing a 3-flowered ensemble, and her usual burgundy ponytail had been changed into slightly curly wavy hair, matching her good figure and beautiful and charming face. Exquisite makeup and mature temperament are simply a killer for men. Bai Xiao wore a loose white sweater and a red jacket, paired with jeans, and a peaked cap on his head. His clothes hanger-like figure made him look more like a handsome and sunny boy. The two met on the street. Natasha Romanoff pretended to be holding a small bag, and simply held Bai Xiao's arm, looking intimate. Bai Xiao glanced at the woman, but there was no resistance in her heart. After all, this woman is indeed very beautiful. What's more, he is now in the golden age of his body. To put it bluntly, he is the most impulsive age. If he hadn't been rational enough and the charm shown by this woman before, he would have fallen into the trap long ago. All I can say is that the soft feeling is wonderful. He loved it. There are many Chinatowns around Queens, but the really famous Chinatown is the Flushing area. This area not only has Chinese immigrants, but also immigrants from other countries, such as Koreans, Hispanics, Africans, Indians, etc., so here Chinatown has a very East Asian flavor. But overall, Chinese Americans account for the largest proportion. In the park, you can see a group of aunties dancing in the square and old men playing chess. In the shopping mall, you can see little girls holding a cup of milk tea and discussing the latest movie. On the streets, you can see people, both white and black, hawking in unauthentic but fluent Chinese. Here you can see unique Oriental meals and products, such as Lanzhou ramen, large plate of chicken, pig's trotter rice, and other unique specialties. There are also street stalls here, selling some Oriental goods, blessing festivals, decorations, etc. Natasha Romanoff was in great spirits, dragging Bai Xiao all the way, and seemed to be very interested in Eastern culture. Bai Xiao didn't take it seriously. This woman is really top-notch in disguise. As a spy who has been trained since she was a child, she has the culture and language of a big country. This woman has dabbled in everything. But I guess half of them are really interested. After all, this woman should perform tasks frequently in SHIELD. After all, working for a shady boss like that black braised egg means you won't have much rest time. What's more, she was still the target of SHIELD. In order to show her sincerity, she had to take on tasks frantically. After finally having some leisurely time and relaxing your tense nerves, you will definitely be somewhat happy. Bai Xiao didn't bother to care about her, and wandered around Chinatown with great interest. Needless to say, Chinatown here is highly overlapped with the East in terms of neighborhoods, buildings, and humanities. There are also a small number of Korean-style shops established by Koreans, and shops of other races. It's really interesting to integrate so many cultures. It will inevitably remind him of the past era and city in his memory. Natasha Romanoff held Bai Xiao's arm. Although most of her attention was on the street snacks or decorations, some of her attention was actually on the boy next to her. When she noticed Bai Xiao's mood swings, she was not surprised. According to Bai Xiao's information, this big boy was brought to New York by his parents when he was very young. He has lived there for so many years, and his childhood memories are always touching. This is a normal human emotion. Wow, look at that, it's incredible. Is that magic? At this time, Natasha Romanoff suddenly cheered and pulled Bai Xiao to trot into a crowd in front. After squeezing through the crowd, there was a young Asian man in front of him, performing a magic that dazzled even Natasha Romanoff. Under his skillful performance, the mask with mysterious lines was replaced by another layer of masks of other colors as soon as he raised his hand. The different masks would change as soon as he raised his hand. It was simply magical. Its skills. Even with Natasha Romanoff's top-notch observation skills and IQ, she couldn't find any traces or flaws in it. Later, Natasha Romanoff saw a flame rising in the young man's hand, jumping back and forth in his hand, and even turned into a mini version of the flaming tiger, roaring and running in his hand like a lifelike one. This made people even more excited. From the exclamations, screams and applause from the crowd, the warm atmosphere was enough to prove how incredible this young man's technique was. Natasha Romanoff was like a little girl seeing a new world, clapping and cheering excitedly. Bai Xiao stared at the young Asian man thoughtfully. The previous technique was a traditional trick, which is normal, but the flame change in one hand, mutant. A mutant uses this method to survive in Chinatown and uses tricks to cover up. This is indeed a smart approach, but unfortunately, it still brings danger to itself. Bai Xiao glanced around inadvertently. There were some people watching around, both men and women, all pretending to be just tourists. In fact, whether it was their temperament, eyes, smell, or low-pitched conversations through the communicator, these people's identities were betrayed. Bai Xiao discovered this, and Natasha Romanoff, as a top agent, naturally could not have noticed it. The woman still kept her expression calm, but her eyes flickered slightly and her mind was running rapidly. At first, she did not suspect the young Asian man performing Oriental magic in front of her. Instead, he thought that Bai Xiaoyu's identity as the butcher had been discovered. She knew how terrifying the sunny boy beside her was. As far as S.H.I.E.L.D. was concerned, this boy's ability to fight alone was almost unparalleled. Even the boy Hawkeye, whom he had always trusted, was no match for him. Once those people reveal Bai Xiao's identity and start a fight in the downtown area, the casualties can be imagined. The key point is that once Bai Xiao cannot be captured, the destructive power he will bring will be extremely astonishing. This will also make her mission a complete failure, and Natasha Romanoff, regardless of public or private life, does not want this boy to be exposed among major organizations. Such an experience is undoubtedly dark. But then, Natasha Romanoff suddenly noticed that the people following her didn't seem to be staring at Bai Xiao, but instead their eyes were on the young Asian man who was still showing Oriental magic. Chapter 23. What's happening here? A big question mark flashed through Natasha Romanoff's mind. She observed the young man carefully again, and felt that there was nothing unusual about him. He was just performing magic normally. At most, the flame magic seemed a bit magical. Natasha Romanoff couldn't help but frown, and she immediately noticed something. Mutant? This Asian is a mutant, and those people who are following him discovered his identity because he used ability, so they are following him? The logic was instantly clear. Natasha Romanoff thought about it for a while, but still pretended not to know anything and remained calm. Natasha Romanoff wanted to pull Bai Xiao away, but after pulling twice, she found that the man in front of her was standing there like a big mountain, and she couldn't pull him away at all. She looked at Bai Xiao in surprise. "Xiao, it's time for us to go to the next place." Natasha Romanoff was a little anxious. She was a spy, and during her mission, her target was always Bai Xiao. Now the Asian was obviously being targeted, and she didn't want Bai Xiao to expose herself as well. But from Bai Xiao's unmoved look, Natasha Romanoff had already guessed what the big boy wanted to do. Obviously this kind boy also discovered the group of people and guessed what those people wanted to do. He wanted to save the Asian compatriot. "Xiao." Natasha Romanoff looked deeply at the boy, feeling touched by his kindness. After all, not everyone would choose to lend a helping hand in such a situation. In particular, Bai Xiao's original identity is very sensitive. Once he takes action, it is very likely that he will be exposed, and his low-key career will completely fail. He may even be hunted down by the conquests. In the future, he will either be arrested or be killed. Choose death in the roundup battle. Or it's a life of escape. It's a pity that Natasha Romanoff thinks a little too much. Bai Xiao doesn't want to leave. He still wants to wait. As a performer of traditional tricks, the first impression makes him feel good. If necessary, he doesn't want to do it at all. Mind helping. And with his current ability, even if he falls out with the government, he will definitely not be the one to suffer. Otherwise, the people in the White House are changing. But the bigger reason why Bai Xiao didn't leave was because he felt an inexplicable and huge spiritual power spreading here. This reminded Bai Xiao of someone instantly. Sure enough, within a few minutes, armed vehicles parked on the street in the distance, and a group of fully armed soldiers got out of the vehicles. Each of them was wearing special equipment, such as shields, and seemingly a weapon similar to a stun gun. The soldiers walked towards this side at a trot. Just when the crowd turned to look and screamed, and the face of the Asian who was still performing changed drastically, and when he was about to flee with fear on his face, the magnificent and huge spiritual power came, and everything came to a standstill. People running, people screaming, and all kinds of strange people were all frozen in place. Even the female spy next to him is like this. There were only two people, one was Bai Xiao, and the other was the Asian. Faced with this situation, the Asian was even more frightened. Just as he was about to run away, a white tourist who had been frozen in front of him suddenly spoke. "Li, don't be afraid, we are here to help you." When the Asian named Li heard this, he didn't care at all. When he was about to escape from this strange place, his body suddenly froze in place again, obviously controlled by the huge spiritual power. The next second, the originally frightened Asian became very quiet for some reason. His body was taken over by him again, but he did not run away, but waited in place. Bai Xiao looked on, and he knew clearly that the owner of the spiritual power and the Asian named Li had experienced some communication in the spiritual world. To be precise, it should be comfort, so that the Asian could calm down. There were footsteps over there. Bai Xiao turned around and saw a group of figures in plain clothes walking over, both men and women. The leader was a woman with burgundy hair like Natasha Romanoff. Next to him is a man wearing special red glasses. "Li, we're here to help you." The crowd was manipulated to separate automatically, and the woman spoke first, but the woman with white hair and a brown coat and white sweater on the side seemed to notice Bai Xiao and was immediately startled. "Who are you?" The rest of the people were immediately alert and looked at Bai Xiao. Everyone frowned when they saw Bai Xiao wearing a peaked cap, with a distinctly yellow complexion, and not too old. Is he another mutant? Being able to resist the professor's psychic power, is he also awakening the psychic power? The man wearing special red glasses whispered. "No, Scott, he's not a mutant." Another person in the crowd spoke, and the others were not surprised. They knew that the person in front of them was briefly controlled by the professor using his psychic power to communicate remotely. "Hello, child, I can feel that you have a special power. It is very powerful and very dangerous. What you are doing is also very dangerous." The man walked up to these people and came face to face with Bai Xiao. She was originally just a young woman, but her eyes showed wisdom and vicissitudes that were completely inconsistent with her appearance. Bai Xiao heard this and looked at the woman in front of him, and his tone became very cold. I am indeed very dangerous. I can invade other people's spiritual world and read memories at will. Isn't this kind of behavior even more annoying? As he spoke, a dangerous aura spread from his body. The majestic pressure made everyone present feel their shoulders were heavy, as if they were carrying an invisible mountain. Everyone was immediately on alert, looking like they were ready to fight at any time. The woman in front of me was silent for a while, and then said, "I'm sorry. To a large extent, I will try to avoid such things, but for mutants' safety, I have to do it. In order to apologize, I can tell her the truth. Identity. I never cared about her identity, I just think your behavior makes me feel disgusted." Bai Xiao didn't care if the woman next to him had her mind invaded, but Charles's unscrupulous behavior of reading other people's memories and snooping into privacy really made him feel disgusted. The professor was silent for a while, and then took the initiative to free Natasha Romanoff's manipulated mind. Chapter 24. What the hell? As soon as she woke up, Natasha Romanoff immediately cursed in a low voice. Her body had been controlled before, but her consciousness was still there, so she naturally knew what happened before. She stared at the woman in front of her angrily. As the ace agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., she can definitely guess who these people are: Charles, one of the strongest mutants, and his students, the X-Men. Natasha Romanoff knew very well that the other party did this not once or twice. Each time, after completing the task, a small part of the memory of the manipulated people present will be erased. If it weren't for what Bai Xiao said just now, she might have had this memory erased without her knowledge. This is not the point. What makes her angry is that her own memory has obviously been read by the other party, and her past experiences have not been read. No one likes their privacy to be watched. I'm sorry, madam, I only watched the memories related to your identity and work in recent days. As for the rest, I didn't touch on it. Please forgive me for being rude. If possible, we will be happy to be your friends and provide some help if needed in the future. Charles, who was occupying the woman's body and mind, seemed to see the source of Natasha Romanoff's anger and opened his mouth to explain. Natasha Romanoff gritted her teeth. As a top agent, she was able to contain her anger very well, but she couldn't smile at all. When she turned around, she had to inject the mind-defying chip device newly developed by SHIELD. Bai Xiao watched with cold eyes and had no intention of revenge for Natasha Romanoff. After all, this woman has nothing to do with him. He was too lazy to pay attention to these people and planned to turn around and leave, but Professor X's voice continued to be heard behind him. "Child, your ability is unique. Your actions will bring you danger. Killing is never the only solution." Bai Xiao didn't bother to listen, turned around and left, while Natasha Romanoff suppressed her anger and followed closely behind. When Scott saw Bai Xiao's arrogant attitude, he clenched his hands and his expression was full of anger, but the white-haired woman next to him held him back. "Scott, don't be impulsive." Scott took a deep breath and calmed down. "Professor, this boy. He is a little special, but his behavior is also a little extreme. He needs guidance, otherwise, he may be swallowed by darkness and anger." After the professor said something briefly, he didn't say more, but told his students to take Li back to the college. The X-Men members looked at each other and became somewhat interested in the Chinese boy. To be able to get the professor's words, it was clear that the other person had something special of his own. However, they still took away Li according to the original method. Following their stance, the frozen scene of everyone on the scene was restarted again. Everyone went about their own business, shopping and having fun, except for the young Asian man who performed oriental magic on the street. As for the group of soldiers, they returned to the armed vehicles and returned the same way. Neither Bai Xiao nor Professor X will care about what happens next. On Bai Xiao's side, something like this happened, and he and Natasha Romanoff couldn't go on in Chinatown. However, Natasha Romanoff did not leave. Instead, she and Bai Xiao came to Flushing Park. By the river, the two of them sat on the lawn, watching the bustling people walking leisurely. Natasha Romanoff hugged her legs and sat next to Bai Xiao. She looked at the river in front of her and the people rowing on the boat, and said, "Xiao, you are the smartest person I have ever met, especially at your age. Are you going to confess to me?" Bai Xiao looked at this woman with interest. "Even if you don't confess, I believe you have guessed it." Natasha Romanoff curved her lips and said playfully, "You are the first person I have ever seen through my disguise just after contacting him. This mission failed. Maybe I should think about how to write a report when I go back. You are indeed a woman who is easy to win people's favor. Bai Xiao affirmed Natasha Romanoff's business ability. Any man will involuntarily lower his guard when facing you. You are very smart to be able to land in front of me more accurately than those from the NYPD. Actually, before you, I contacted 13 suspected targets, but after I contacted them, I eliminated their suspicion until you. Natasha Romanoff answered frankly, I wasn't sure at first, but when I looked into your eyes, I seemed to see the devil hidden inside. Xiao, there is a vicious devil living in your heart. From that moment on, I just assume that you are that person. You can read some information from the eyes, you are very good. Bai Xiao nodded, he knew his situation. After experiencing massacre again and again, with blood on his hands, no matter who he was, there would always be some changes. Maybe it's madness, maybe it's bloodthirsty, no matter how well you disguise it, if you meet someone with keen senses, you will always be incapable of showing your flaws. This is even more true for him. After he has killed so many people, his physical quality continues to strengthen, and his life level is getting higher and higher. When facing people with lower life levels, there will be an instinctive suppression of the lower ones by the superior. Combined with getting up makes Natasha Romanoff feel nervous and afraid. This is Natasha Romanoff. If there were other people who were so keen, but without Natasha Romanoff's experience and her iron will, they probably wouldn't have the courage to even look at him. No matter how powerful you are, I can't compare to you. At your age, you have shown amazing single-target combat capabilities and clear and rational thinking. People like you are more suitable to be an agent than me. Natasha Romanoff helped. He held up his hair that was blown by the breeze. So the farce is over. Bai Xiao turned to look at Natasha Romanoff. Her face still had a sunny look, but her voice was serious and warning, I can tolerate you bringing a little fun to my slightly boring daily life, but don't think about breaking the bottom line, otherwise, you, and the people behind you, don't want to see a demon unleashing its anger. Chapter 25. Natasha Romanoff is gone. Without this beautiful woman, Bai Xiao was not uncomfortable at all. At most, she was a little reluctant at first. It should be regarded as a boy's instinctive emotion towards beautiful women. But that sentiment was quickly dispelled. Bai Xiao has never considered himself to be a person without desires, especially when it comes to women. If possible, he doesn't mind releasing his impulses at all. He is no ascetic either, he knows what he desires. He wants mansions, manners, and women. But Bai Xiao's biggest desire now is still power. Feeling yourself become stronger, the growth of power, the beauty is not inferior to these desires in the slightest, and even exceeds these desires. What's more, with enough power, those things will follow. At present, his strong desire overwhelms everything else. When this emotion stabilizes later, he may consider other things. Otherwise, he wouldn't still be living in that small shabby house in Queens. With his current ability, would it be difficult to build a luxurious manor and hold bank parties with countless women? In the future, Bai Xiao plans to pursue growth while also improving the quality of life. This is the royal way. Expansion is impossible. New York Xavier Youth Mutant Academy. As a car drove by, it stopped on the wide platform inside the academy. The X-Men members and the Asian young man named Lee walked down. Come with me, I believe you will like life here. Qin led the young man in the direction of the dormitory. Others went to the principal's office. I met many mutant children and students on the road, and these students greeted the teachers warmly. Hey, good morning, Ms. Scott, Ms. Ororo, Ms. Logan. Good morning. The white-haired Ororo and several other teachers also responded one after another. Only the strong man with a deep face remained cool enough and just nodded without responding. The students were used to this cool macho guy and didn't take it seriously. But these students were more discussing what tasks the teachers had performed this time. I thought I saw Teacher Qin leading someone to the dormitory just now. Another mutant partner? I wonder what his ability is. Maybe, hopefully his ability will be cool. Aha, John, your ability is pretty cool, but you just accidentally burn off other people's eyebrows. Shut up, Poppy, I wasn't careful last time. That's impossible to say. These large and small students were chattering and discussing, and they also had fights from time to time. It was peaceful and lively. In the principal's office, several teachers knocked on the door and walked in. They saw a bald old man with a gentle face sitting on a specially made metal wheelchair, reading a book in front of the window, and when they saw Oral Luo and others walked in, and he also put the books on Xingxing's lap. Headmaster. So, what happened to that kid? Scott spoke first, and Charles said gently, wait a minute, Qin. Qin didn't keep everyone waiting, she came to the office a few minutes later. Others will take over the subsequent arrangements for the Asian Li. After all, this school at Nottingham University always hires some people to help. Seeing everyone gathered together, Charles pondered for a moment before speaking slowly. That woman is from the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. What department is this? I don't think I've ever heard of it. Scott said in surprise. So does the rest. This is a very special, hidden and huge special institution. Its history should be traced back to the Second World War, but I don't know some of the details. I just noticed another thing at the time, but you can just pay more attention to this institution. That woman is an agent? Scott asked. Her mission is to contact and observe the boy named John Shaw. Charles nodded. So, what's so special about him? That he would be contacted and observed by a female agent sent by such a mysterious organization? Qin asked curiously. Charles sighed, have you heard about the recent appearance of a cruel butcher in Queens? You mean the butcher who has massacred 500 people in recent months? Scott said in shock. The expressions of the rest of the people changed slightly. A huge murderer appeared in Queens. This news has been very sensational in the past month. The details disclosed by major news media have aroused widespread discussion among people across the United States. This butcher massacred more than 500 people in 4 consecutive months. These people were either gangsters selling leaves or robbing people, but they were also gang members. They also included a man named Hermanud who massacred more than 200 people inside the gang base. Gunner. This kind of achievement is amazing. The target of the massacre, the single-body combat ability demonstrated by this butcher, and the fact that he did not leave any flaws when committing the crime are enough to arouse people's controversy. The debate is divided into non-supporters and fans. If something sparks controversy across the United States, it is enough to prove its influence. Although they live in the college, they are naturally aware of such news, and even the students in the college have many admirers. Professor, are you saying that the butcher is the kid? Logan said in surprise. The professor nodded. From the female agent's memory, the identity should have been determined. Wow, I thought my feeling was wrong. It seems that he is really a real butcher. Logan said wow. What did you feel? Logan. Ololo looked at Logan. The first time I saw that kid, my whole body was shaking, and my steel claws even stretched out uncontrollably. At that time, a kind of wildness almost swallowed me up. At that time, I only wanted to do one thing, tear him apart. Logan took out a cigar from his arms, lit it slowly, put it in his mouth, and blew out a puff of smoke. At that time, I was sure that there was a ferocious beast hidden under that kid's skin. Such a person vaguely reminded me of a person in my memory, but I couldn't think of who it was, but there was no doubt that he very dangerous. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.